Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Retro Odyssey.
Gentlemen?
What?
Who are you? What's going on?
My boss is concerned that the podcast isn't appealing to our listeners.
What?
Well, I know we don't have a huge following, but I think we...
Well, the fact is, no one plays old video games anymore.
I play old video games.
Nobody important plays old video games anymore.
Hey!
Well then, what exactly are you suggesting?
New games! Games that are relevant! Games that are action-packed, exciting, and popular with the kids!
What?
Wait. So you want the Retro Odyssey to cover new games?
Not retro. You're being rebranded.
What?
This has to be a joke. You can't just do this.
Just did. Gentlemen?
Well, shit.
What?
By corporate decree, your favorite band of retrobates has been transformed into mighty warriors of the future, ready to face foes so fresh they haven't even been born yet. We are the boys of the Odyssey Xtreme 2019 podcast. Hello and welcome to the Odyssey Xtreme 2019 podcast. We are apparently covering new games now. Brand new games, not retro games. So we have 4 games this month that we've chosen, which are a little bit more modern than what we covered in the past. I'm your host Matt, and I'm joined by Adam, Stephen, and Ryan. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hey.
So what do you guys think about our new format change?
What?
Well, it was a touch unnecessary. Am I allowed to say that?
I'm not hip and cool enough, apparently, to be the host for a modern games podcast, so...
Yeah, we had a vote. Apparently I'm the most extreme member of the 4 of us, so I was chosen to host this one.
I believe you.
So we have 4 games, so let's get straight into them with Adam's pick. If you're looking for controllers so fresh they haven't even been invented yet, go to 8000bitdo.com. Proud sponsors of the Odyssey Xtreme 2019 podcast.
My pick for this month is Pokemon Let's Go. Both Pikachu and Eevee, because they're pretty much the same. The Pokemon Let's Go games were developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Switch at the back end of last year, 2018. So remake of the original game, and there are sort of tweaks in it to make it a bit more user-friendly. And also to kind of make it slightly reminiscent of the Pokemon Go phone game. And yeah, this is actually like the 5th time we've visited Kanto and done like all the Kanto League and stuff during 7 generations we've had. So we've had the original game, we've had the remake in Gen 3, we've had the Return to Kanto in Gen 2 for the post-game, and then the Return to Kanto in the Gen 2 remake. And now Pokemon Let's Go, so that's 5 times. Yeah.
Checks out.
Yeah. But then again...
Popular place.
Well, yeah. But then, like, the Alola games and the Kalos games, so Gen 6 and 7, they had a lot of Gen 1 stuff from, like, Gen 1 Alolan forms, Gen 1 Megas, Gen
The
1
starters.
Stars. Yeah. So, you know, really, if you're counting the games that had a lot of Gen 1, you know, PP sucking, then I guess this is like the kind of the 7th time in 7 generations that Gen 1ers have been satisfied. Like, apart from Gen 5, which kind of strayed away for a bit.
Let me stop you there. Gen 1ers are never satisfied.
This is true.
Well, the thing is, like, Gen 5 took a little bit of a break away from it and tried to do its own thing. Brand new 151 Pokemon, tried to be, as fresh as possible, so it's like going in fresh for the first time. And they all started crying about it, and, here we are, another Gen 1 remake.
And funny enough, I thought Gen 5 was actually pretty good. I really liked some of those Pokemon.
Gen 5 was really good. I like Black and White 1 and 2. I appreciate Black and White 1 for having, completely fresh Pokemon until the post-game. Although I admit that Black and White 2 is better for replaying, because once you've done it once, you kind of want a mixture of all the Pokemon. So I kind of wish that Black and White 1 had a New Game Plus mode, where you get to do it all again, but with all the Pokemon. But yeah, Gen 5 was great. And then people started complaining, saying, I don't know any of these Pokemon. So
well, yeah, it's such a silly complaint, too. It's I'm suddenly not familiar with something 100%. It's well...
If they remember the first game, it was amazing going in and be like, oh, what the hell's this guy? I have no idea what this is. Let's play. He looks cool.
And I was one of those that dropped off after Gold and Silver. So Black and White is when I first came back to Pokemon. That was when I got back into the series. So that was, just like you said, a whole new start, a whole, it's a whole new world to live in,
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not bitter about, all the Gen 1 love stuff that, almost every generation has. I'm just a little bit tired of it, to be honest. And it feels more Gen 1 stuff. With Gen 6, that was the first game I played after taking a break from Gen 2, like you. And I played it, and I got my starters, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then, the next town along, I get a brand new set of starters, which are the Gen 1 Pokemon. And it's fucking hell. If I wanted to play the original game, I'd go back and play the original game. But, yeah, anyway, so I'm a little bit tired of Gen 1, and when this got announced, I was kind of a little bit indifferent to it. So I didn't really like Pokemon Go at all. So the fact that this used Pokemon Go mechanics, and it's a remake of Gen 1, and it was a full-price game, I was just I can't be arsed with this. But then as I started seeing more and more, I started to get a little bit more into it. But when it first got announced, it was just really a Kanto remake. Because we're talking about Gen 1 and stuff like that and the old stuff, I think it's probably important before we start talking about Let's Go to talk about our history with the series. My voice is screwed, so I'm going to let you guys go first and take a bit of a breather. So what's your history with it, with Pokemon?
Me personally, although I do have a number of the Game Boy Pokemon games, I've never really gone into them. I'm a little bit too old to have really been caught up in the craze when it first came out. So I'm 37 now. I mean, I don't know when Pokemon came out, but I think I was well into my late teens by the time it actually came out. So
it was 1998 on this side of the planet.
All right, so yeah, I would have been 17. So I was a little bit too old, and I never kind of really got into it. I never really saw the appeal. I dipped a little bit into Pokemon Go when that came out. I very quickly fell off. I'm kind of back into it now, but I fell off pretty quickly on that. And I wasn't really interested in Let's Go when it was announced. I just thought, okay, it's a Pokemon game, I'm not really going to be interested in that. But I saw a lot of gameplay footage. I saw a lot of people saying they really, really liked it. So, on a whim, I just picked it up. I picked up the Eevee version, and I really, really did enjoy it. It was quite a surprise for me. I know it doesn't play like a lot of the older Pokemon games, but as kind of I'm looking at this with fresh eyes, and I had a lot of fun with it.
Well, it's funny how you say it doesn't play like the old Pokemon games, because it kind of does, just refined. I found that Pokemon, the formula, a lot of it's quite outdated and archaic, and it feels like, why are we still doing this? Why are we still getting HMs just to bypass stupid things that we have to teach Pokemon? And it kind of felt like it was going into a bit of a rut. So this just feels like the proper games but updated. This feels like stuff that they should have done like years ago, to be honest. And some of the other changes, which aren't refinements, like for example, seeing Pokemon in the grass, that feels like stuff that is just a massive improvement. And it's something they're actually getting rid of for Sword and Shield, which shocks me, to be honest, because, like with seeing wild Pokemon in the grass, I think that's a game changer. I think that's something that I don't know if I can go back to random encounters anymore.
That was usually my favorite part, was just seeing all the Pokemon in the wild.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
and
like one of the worst parts about the original games are caves and surfing, because there's nothing to do to avoid about it. Yeah, thing is, like when you're outside, at least you can attempt to avoid as much grass as possible. But when you're in a cave or surfing, all you can do is just use like constant repels.
Zubat.
Yeah, and it's just like, because there are only certain Pokemon that spawn in a certain area, you'll either be getting like Tentacles or Zubats constantly. And it's just like, shit. At least in like Let's Go, you can see them pop up and you're like, okay, I don't want to fight another one. Let's just wander around it.
Well, and the problem is, most of the Pokemon fan base, particularly the ones that have been hanging around since Gen 1 just to complain about everything, bitched and complained about Let's Go. And are like, we don't want the mobile game, infringing on our proper RPG, even though they were told they were still getting Sword and Shield eventually.
Honestly, I think that it was a bit of a double-edged sword, was the whole Let's Go marketing. Because I think linking it to the Pokemon Go games, you kind of got the casual fans, which, started playing a Pokemon thing for the first time in ages, which are the market they wanted to attract, getting interested in it. And then on the other hand, you've got the people who are fans of like the Pokemon series thinking, really, you're going to be making like, a shitty mobile game? What the hell?
Yeah, I mean, like, the whole point was to draw in the Pokemon Go crowd and get them onto a Nintendo console in time for the new main series game to come out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because at the end of the day, big Pokemon fans, they might moan about it, but they're probably going to get it anyway. Yeah. Whereas, like, the people that don't get Pokemon games, they're the people they want to attract. So I get why they did that marketing, but I can also see how it drew a lot of negative attention.
But it was like an absolute cultural phenomenon. I mean, it got so many people into it. So from a marketing perspective, it definitely did work.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, like with Pokemon Go, like loads of people played it. I mean, a lot of people complained about it as well because, the gameplay was kind of shitty. Like the app as well was kind of broken and there was a lot of problems, or a lot of people had a lot of problems. Myself included, to a point where people just sort of gave up with it. But you're right, it was a cultural phenomenon and it was like immensely popular. So I think trying to get those people in was a really good move.
And I mean, for me, in Pokemon Go, I don't really do stuff like raids and gyms and stuff like that. My main appeal for it, I'm like a collector at heart and I just want to get like all the Pokemon. I want to catch them all. Yeah. So that is kind of like my main drive for playing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, that's one of the main things for Pokemon is catching them all. Like, whether it's the console games or Pokemon Go, the whole kind of gotta get all of them and record them in the Pokedex or whatever is one of the main draws to the series. Like, they made loads of changes to the game, and the only things really that lined up with Pokemon Go are probably the wild Pokemon mechanic where you've got to throw the ball and the candies and stuff. And aside from that, it's pretty much a normal Pokemon game, just with loads of enhancements.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who's been into the series for a while and has gone back to catch up on what I missed, I really dug Let's Go. Like, I would love to see this continue as a series, as an alternate series, and get a Let's Go in every region.
Definitely. I mean, they talked about, if it's popular, that Let's Go Johto is something that, they'll definitely consider next.
Yeah.
And, as far as I'm aware, Let's Go did, really well sales-wise, and it got really good reviews, so honestly, I think that it's pretty much a surefire thing that we're going to get a Gen 2 one next, which I am really into because I love Gen 2. Johto is my favourite region, so doing that storyline again, but in the Let's Go format, I'm all up for that. Especially now that I've seen that with Pokemon Sword and Shield that they're actually dropping some of those mechanics. It'd be nice to get some of those enhancements back again for a new Let's Go game, but this time with, my favourite game.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be great. So yeah, anyway, history with the series, I think we kind of sidetracked a bit. So Matt, you said that you never really got into it because you were too old at the time, so this was like your first experience?
Pretty much.
Steve, you were like me, you played until like Gen 2 and then you didn't come back until a lot later?
Well, let me tell you a story. Christmas Day, 1999, I got Pokemon Yellow and a Game Boy Color. And for like the next 6 months, that was the only thing I did. And like I was full on into Pokemania. Like I had, all the movies. I had a bunch of the cards. I had, the trading card game, video game. Like I was 100% in. And then, like I said, I just dropped after Gold and Silver. I don't know why. I just dropped. Then didn't come back till Gen 5 when I was like, oh, let me go back and catch up. And it's all still really good. Like I've now been through all the gens that we've had, and now Let's Go, and I'm just this is still a really good series.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was in a similar boat. My friend had Pokemon Red on the Game Boy, and I picked up Pokemon Blue on a Game Boy, and then I continued on, and I think I got Pokemon Yellow at some point. I definitely remember playing it as a child, and then I got Pokemon Crystal. I don't remember ever playing Gold and Silver, so I think that, by the time my parents would get me it, so probably like a Christmas or a birthday, probably. Crystal was probably out by that point, I would imagine. But I remember playing that and enjoying it a lot. And then I had Pokemon Snap on the N64 and Pokemon Stadium. And I think that was pretty much all my Pokemon-ness as a child. And then after that, I never played Gen 3 because I don't think I had a Game Boy Advance. I think that was the reason. And then I was starting to get a bit old as well, and I didn't revisit it until Gen 6. And I think that was only because I had a 3DS at the time. Because I got a 3DS when... Oh, I got a 3DS. It must have been in the early days because I ended up getting the... Remember the Ambassador games? For people that got it early? I actually got the Ambassador games as well, so I must have picked up a 3DS pretty early on, for whatever reason. And then obviously I picked up Pokemon X when it came out, and that was just because it was on the system I had. And then I got proper into it, apart from, the Gen 1 stuff. And I decided to go back and replay Gen 3, 4, 5 that I missed, and, varying results. Some of the games are definitely better than others, but all in all, the series is, like, really strong. And as you say, having a Let's Go version of all the regions would, be pretty good. Apart from, like, Gen 2, I can wait on the other ones. Like, I don't want them to blow the load really early and just do it, like, every other year. But it'd still be good to get, like, Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 out earlier on, maybe. Although saying that, we've just had a Gen 3 remake, haven't we, with a Mega Rupee and Alpha Sapphire, so...
Yeah. Somebody made a point, I don't remember who it was or where it was, but they said that we get something every couple of years, and a Let's Go series would just be something they could add to the cycle to where...
They've got something else in.
Yeah, we're still getting regular Pokemon stuff, but it's not the same Pokemon stuff over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is just replacing the remakes. Like, we've had Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Mega Rupee, Alpha Sapphire. Really, this is just continuing the remake cycle, but on consoles. Because, I think that the handheld market's going to kind of die with Nintendo. I think they're going to keep on with the hybrid. And, there's rumours of a portable-only Switch coming out, which I think was probably the closest they're going to get to another handheld. And I think that this is a good way to do it, is just say, okay, the old-school handheld remakes are now scrapped, and we're going to start these, let's go. And this is going to be the remake series. And then on top of that, you've got your main games, and then, obviously you're going to get some spin-offs too, like we had Pokemon Quest, and we'll probably get stuff like, maybe another Pokemon pinball game, or heaven forbid another Pokemon Snap game. Maybe.
Pokemon Conquest.
There's nothing wrong with Pokemon Snap.
Pokemon Snap was amazing, and I said heaven forbid because everyone's been saying, can we get a Pokemon Snap 2? And Nintendo just keep ignoring it. Like, on the Wii U, that'd have been perfect for a Pokemon Snap 2 with the tablet, but we never got it. I mean, you can argue the same thing with the Switch, to be honest. You could still do a thing because you've got the tablet, and you could use that like a camera, but, I think that the Wii U was like the perfect console for a Pokemon Snap 2, and it just never happened.
So, Ryan, what was your history with the series?
My history actually started strongly only a few years ago. There was, this being the United States, I don't know how big this was over in other countries, but there was a huge ordeal over Pokemon games here in the U.S. of them being evil and promoting evolution and promoting the gay agenda. Not joking.
Gay agenda? Why?
Lavender Town. Purple is gay.
Well,
I'm not joking.
But Fuchsia City exists.
Lavender Town, gay. Purple meant gay. It was a gay. That seriously, the whole the what you consider what we call now the evangelical right.
I can
they were
understand
all up in arms.
I can understand the whole evolution thing, and maybe even the satanic thing to a degree. Push. I can sort of see things that they would latch on to and find issue with. But, it would be our stretch, but at least there's something. But the gay agenda?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, in the cartoon, James is quite effeminate, but that's probably the closest I could think.
This is America.
Shit. We didn't have like that over here, did we, Matt?
Not to that kind of extent, not so much the evangelical stuff. We did have the whole BBFC Video Nasties saga, but that was about 10 years earlier.
Was that about, like, the Pokemon episodes? The ones that were banned?
Oh, no. This is all about 80s horror films.
Oh, okay. I mean, like, something like this for Pokemon.
Not to my knowledge, but again, I wasn't really into Pokemon, so it's not something I probably would have picked up on if it did happen.
Yeah, I don't remember anything. I mean, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but I don't remember hearing, like, anything like that or any negativity. Maybe children getting addicted to it could have been a thing, but...
Anyway, that being said, I grew up in a conservative household, and my brother had the Game Boy, and he was going to get Red and Blue, and then, like, my mom was going to buy it, and then she heard about that, and she canceled it, and we didn't get Pokemon when I was a kid. So there was a good gap there where I didn't have Pokemon, but then when Heart of Gold and Soul of Silver came out, I grabbed that. And that was my first real dive back into Pokemon. I emulated some games after that on my laptop, and shame on me, but
No, okay.
That's when I kind of got into it, and then I took a break for a while. I skipped Black and White 2, or Black and White and Black and White 2. And then when X and Y came out, is when I jumped back in, and it was I'm kind of stuck. I skipped the last generation again. I'll skip a generation just so I don't burn myself out, but I'm definitely looking forward to Sword and Shield here.
Yeah. Out of interest, I mean, I can imagine what the answer is for Matt being a complete newbie, but what's your approach to the game? I know Matt was saying that he kind of likes collecting everything.
That was more in Pokemon Go, really. I mean, I did play through the story in Let's Go. I mean, I've not got all the way through the story, but I have been enjoying playing the story. So how do you approach playing a Pokemon game? Because depending on how you are with the series and your history with the series, a lot of people play differently. Some people collect everything.
Some people try and vary up the teams. Some people just go for like certain types of Pokemon or like the cutest Pokemon.
When I go into a Pokemon game, now when I went to Let's Go, because there wasn't a whole lot of battling going on, and the Pokemon they hand you with like Eevee or Pikachu, whatever edition you picked, just get some of the most crazy powerful moves, and you can usually use it even against type disadvantages because they're just so strong. I was going in there just to collect as many Pokemon as I could. Normally, when I go into a Pokemon game, I will find a Pokemon that has really good base stats, and I will just turn it into an absolute murder machine as fast as I can. I will grind it out, and it's weird because when it comes to JRPGs, I hate grinding, but Pokemon specifically, I will roid out a Pokemon and go as far as I can with one Pokemon. And when it comes down to I need a second one, I'll pick another one and do the same thing.
So you kind of collect everything, but when it comes down to your team, you find a bunch of Pokemon you want and make them monstrous.
Yeah.
Nice. What about you, Stephen? How do you approach Pokemon games?
See, I approach a lot of them in different ways. I know one of the habits I was trying to kick is every time I'd play Gen 1, I'd end up with basically the same team. Jolteon, Alakazam, my starter, Gyarados. Like, I would have the exact same team every time because I like specific ones from Gen 1. Whereas when I go into a new game, it's basically just, finding the ones that I like and then figuring out how to assemble them into a team. So, like, when I played Gen 6 and I found the Aegislash line, I was like, oh, man, this is amazing. I've got to use this. A lot of times it's just finding the ones that I like and picking the ones that are... I mean, all the Pokemon are viable. Just, getting the ones that'll work well. I'm also a big fan of Steel types, so I usually will try to have at least one or two of those.
Show Steelix some love.
See, I like Caesar better.
Yeah, Caesar is really good.
He's a bit faster, too.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
But I also quite like B-Sharp.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah, he's awesome. But yeah, for me, I normally when I go in fresh, if I'm playing it normally, I'll sort of do what Ryan does. I'll pick up pretty much everything along my way, and then I'll find a Pokemon that I like, and then I'll try and find one with really good stats, and use that one and kind of stick with them to build them up. Normally, I'll just find one with decent-ish stats and then continue like that. But Pokemon Let's Go was different, and there's something to kind of discuss. I mean, when I went back into the series with Pokemon X, I really got into competitive battling, and I got into the whole EVs and IVs thing and breeding and, getting like pretty much perfect Pokemon in which to fight and having like a properly synergized team, which when I go through a game, I still try and have a good synergy in my team. But with Pokemon Let's Go, you can also get a really, really competitive Pokemon just right off the bat. Because I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but how it works is that you get combo multipliers, and the combo multipliers increase like the potential base stats of the Pokemon. So effectively, the base stats will increase the more combos you get, and also the shiny chance will increase. If you get up to, I think it's like 31 combo, you've basically got the maximum, percentage for a 6 IV, which is like the, 6 perfect stats in a Pokemon. And then you've got a fair chance of encountering a shiny as well. So, like, one thing I did when I played is I thought, I really like Beedrill. I want Beedrill to be on my team. And I just started chain catching Weedles, in Viridian Forest. And then, like, the 32nd one I caught was not only the nature I wanted, like an adamant one, but it was almost perfect stats. And I was like, right, I'll have this. And it was so easy to get. It took very little time, very little effort. No breeding, no, like, using particular methods or particular items and hatching eggs and all that shit. It's just a case of getting a combo catch, and that's pretty much it. soon after, you can get pretty much a Pokemon that's, going to be, top draw.
Well, and that was something I wanted to bring up is this game made it so much easier for collectors and people that are looking for specific things. Because, what I ended up doing is I did that with Nidoran. Because I like male Nidoran and I like Nidoking. Yeah. But I've never really used them in a game. So I go, okay, I'm going to use them in this one. And when I found out about the catch mechanics, I was like, oh, let me chain this. And then, 40, 45 in, I get a shiny one that's got really good stats. And I'm like, this is amazing. Because up until this game, I'd never seen a shiny in the wild. I'd only gotten the ones that they give you. So this game making it that much easier to get shinies and stronger Pokemon and all that is a really, really good thing. I really love that.
Yeah, I mean, they're still not really common, so you've still got to work for it, but it's not ridiculously difficult to do. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, it's great for competitive battling because you can build a team so quickly. You'd have to put in so many hours of breeding and hatching eggs, and it was really boring to do. But now it's so easy. If you want a specific nature, there's a woman who predicts nature. You pay her a bit of money, you say what nature you want, and every Pokemon you'll catch for the rest of the day or until you visit her again will be that nature. So you can say, okay, I want a jolly whatever. You then go out, you get a 31 combo, and if you're not bothered about a shiny, then pretty much after that, keep on checking them, and you're probably going to get one with 5 or 6 perfect IVs, and you're good to go. It's so quick to do. It's I battle with my friends, and I say, okay, this afternoon or this evening or something, we'll battle. I want to create a new team. And then, for a couple of hours, I'll just catch a bunch of random Pokemon using this method, and I can make them ready to go in no time. Because in the final cave, you can get loads of XP from chaining chances, and just get an absolute ton of XP to get them up to level 100. You can get TMs easy, and you can reteach them to Pokemon, which you couldn't do in the original Gen 1. And you can get the moveset, you can get level 100, you can get perfect stats. So easy. And they've even introduced a bottle cap mechanic as well, which if you find bottle caps, you can make it so that every IV is perfect if you get a gold one. And they're not the easiest things to get, and you can only get one per day, but it's still something there where, if you're not happy with near perfect, then this is good enough.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You can basically find a naive whatever that's shiny, and you're like, okay, that's what I wanted, but the stats are shit. You find one of these gold bottle caps, you visit the guy, and now it's a perfect stat shiny Pokemon with your nature.
And that's the other thing is it's easy for me to take the Pokemon that I like and make them even more viable because I can retrain their stats up.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue that I have is the EV system is a little bit broken because you use candies to basically push their stats further.
Right.
In the past games, you could put 252 into each stat maximum and 510, I think, in total. So you can basically max out 2 stats and then stick a little bit on another one.
Right.
Whereas in this one, you can stick 200 on every stat and there's no limit. So you can put 200 in every stat. And it just makes all Pokemon super bulky and, super good. Which, if you're fighting the master trainers in this, it just makes your Pokemon so overpowered. You've got people fighting the Elite Four with a Kakuna just because they've done all these EVs. And I think that not limiting you kind of makes it so that Pokemon can potentially be too overpowered. I like having the limit, so you're like, okay, I want to emphasize speed and attack, or I want to emphasize defense and HP, for example. And I kind of like that because it gives Pokemon specialities within a team, rather than just I'm going to make this Pokemon super bulky. And I think that's the only issue I have with the training system. But honestly, I think that as a whole, they did really well with the training system because they just made it so much easier. And as you can say, getting a shiny, viable Pokemon that is your favorite Pokemon is so easy to do, and I really appreciate that.
So what benefits does a shiny have over a normal Pokemon?
It looks cool.
Absolutely not. It looks cool.
Zero.
Ah,
It's basically a different colour. So, like, some of them, honestly, in Gen 1, there aren't many shinies that look really good.
Because
like,
all they did was retroactively put some weird colors in because it didn't exist at the time of Gen 1.
Yeah, and I mean, the ones that they had in Gen 2 weren't great because of the colour palette. So, like, a lot of them were, like, pink or green. So they kind of look a bit weird. But some of the later generations, you get these new Pokemon, and they've got, like, really good colours. Like, for example, one of my favourite shinies is Hooper. The Pokemon itself I don't like using. I don't find it enjoyable to use, but it's this psychic ghost dark Pokemon. It's got different forms. And the shiny version is gold. So it looks like this gold genie, and it's really cool. So it's just a palette swap. There's no, like, increased stats or anything like that. It's just, it looks nice.
I have a couple shinies in Pokemon Go, but none in Let's Go.
Well, if you transfer them over to Let's Go, there'll be shinies in Let's Go too.
Ah, cool. I'm not sure of the Gen 1 though. I mean, I've got
Okay.
Jigglypuff. I know that's Gen 1.
Yeah.
And I've got Shuppet.
Nope,
Shuffit is Gen 3.
Ah,
But if you hang on until Pokemon Sword and Shield, if that has Go connectivity, you might be able to get in that. So it's not going to be useless. And I think Shuppet's quite a good shiny from what I remember. Just having a quick look. Oh yeah, because like when it comes to Burnett, it's like a kind of a green, yellow and pink colour. So it's quite cool. Yeah, it's cool shiny. So there you go. Anyway, yeah, mechanically, from like a competitive standpoint, I really appreciate the stuff they did. Did you get into any of that stuff, Ryan and Matt?
I never got into the competitive, like fighting other people.
Oh, I mean, did you get
So-
into using like the new mechanics, like the chaining?
Oh yeah, I was doing that a little bit, mostly trying to hunt for shinies, but then I actually hopped on the Google machine and looked up the stats, and it's like you have a 1 in 4,000 something chance to just randomly to like initial encounter a shiny in the wild. Once you get like to hit the 32 combo or whatever it is, you only drop down to like 3,000, and then if you use a super repel, it'll bring it down to like 1 in 1,800, but if you get your shiny badge or
Shiny Charm?
your shiny charm, it brings it down to like a 1 in 200. It's a massive improvement. So I need to fill out my Pokedex before I go and fill out a shiny Pokedex.
Yeah, it's so easy with a Shiny Charm. You basically just get them all the time. Like, I just find random ones, even when I'm not chaining. It's great.
Also, I said repel and I meant attract.
Yeah.
I've never gotten the shiny charm in any of the games just because it's always one of the last things you get. And usually when I play through, I'm moving on to the next one without finishing the Pokedex.
Well, the good thing is, this is Gen 1, so there's 153 Pokemon. And, like, stuff like Mew and Meltan, you don't even need to get, so you've only got to get 150.
Right. Well, and the thing with this one is, like, I was, I knew I was going to complete the Pokedex, but the thing is, there were certain Pokemon that I was going to use in my team that I wanted to be shiny for the whole run, so I had to get some the hard way before I even got started.
Yeah. I kind of think that for Let's Go Pikachu and then, like, the Gen 2 Let's Go, if they ever make it, it's a very doable task to get the Shiny Charm. Because, I mean, now I think there are like 800 and something Pokemon. Maybe close to 900 by the time Sword and Shield's out.
It's definitely close to 9, let me see.
And that's a lot of Pokemon. So, yeah, I think there's about 800 and something, so probably 900 and something by next
807 is the current count before Sword and Shield.
And just think, there's someone who knows all of their names.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's 807, you say. We can already add, 9 to that because we know about the starters for next gen. So that's already 816. So, yeah, I think they're going to be close to 900 by Sword and Shield.
They should go over.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they get it to 900 exact just to make it a nice number. 900 Pokemon, that's a big task. But in this, 150, that's doable. especially as most of them are like evolutions, and you can actually see them in the wild. So it's not like you've got to randomly walk into grass and get random Pokemon all the time until you find what you want. You just keep on walking, stick on a track so loads of them pop up, and it's like, oh, there's Scyther, there's Tauros.
Yeah, and you can tweak your odds of seeing a particular one with your catch combo, because you get those rare ones to show up.
Yeah, so you just get a catch combo of the common ones, and then like the other ones come up. Like you get a chain of, for example, Caterpie or something. Say you want a shiny Butterfree, and then you'll get like a chain of that, and you think, okay, I want a really good stat Pokemon for Caterpie, and then out pops a Squirtle, and you're like, shit, do I break the combo now just to catch this? That's the only problem, is you'd see a rare Pokemon pop up, and you'd be like, do I break my combo and catch it, or what?
I've done that a couple times.
Being someone who enjoys like the collectible aspect of it and trying to get all of them, I don't think that I would enjoy it as much if you couldn't see the Pokemon before you caught them.
Yeah, I mean, in Pokemon it's not so bad, to be honest, because random encounters I'm not a particular fan of. I mean, you know me, I don't really like JRPGs which, you know, typically have random encounters. But with Pokemon, I've always been sort of okay with it. As I say, I do get irritated by surfing sections and cave sections where it's completely unknown. But at least the good thing is in the other Pokemon games, you do get patches of grass. So there are areas where you know encounters are likely to happen and areas where it's not going to happen at all. So at least in that respect, it's a little bit more tolerable. But yeah, I think definitely being able to see them is, you know, a lot better. Anyway, we've talked a lot about those kind of mechanics. One of the controversial things which I mentioned was the fact that they removed wild Pokemon battles in favour of the catching minigame. So what did you make of that?
I quite enjoyed the catching thing. I did originally use the Joy-Cons to do it, and then a friend came over who had the Pokeball controller, and I tried it with that. You know, that was fine. I actually found it a lot easier to catch Pokemon in handheld mode.
Oh,
because you can just line it up so much easier. You don't have to aim with your hand. You can aim with the controller. And for me, that's how I prefer to do it. If I'm going out, if I'm catching Pokemon, I'll do it in handheld mode.
Yeah, I mean, like, I found that the Joy-Cons generally worked. I would compare it to, like, Skyward Sword, where 90% of the time it's fine, and then, like, 10% of the time it'll just do what it wants. So you'll throw your ball, and generally it'll go in the right direction, and then sometimes you'll throw it straight ahead, and it'll just go wherever the fuck it wants. And, you know, with the Pokeball, it's definitely better. Although I found the Pokeball very noisy, and I just had to stop using it after like a few times because it was getting on my nerves, and it's just been sat in a box ever since.
Noisy?
Yeah, because you do, and it's got sound effects. Like it does.
Yeah, you get the catch sound effects and whatnot.
Yeah, you get throwing sound effects, and then it starts going dudum, dudum, dudum as it's, you know, attempting to catch it. Then you hear the squeak of the Pokemon. So, like, during the catching minigame, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. And I was using it while I was recording, and it was like, for fuck's sake, all you can hear is this fucking Pokeball. So I ended up just sticking in a box because I kind of found the Joy-Cons to be more enjoyable to use and less noisy. But as you say, I think the handheld's probably the easiest way to go. My original playthrough was using the Joy-Cons, but, you know, for the post-game and for catching Pokemon and getting teams and stuff, I just used handheld.
Well, and this is where we come to my number one gripe with Let's Go, is they made it so that you have to use the motion control mechanics. You know, even in handheld, you still have to aim with motion control.
Yeah.
And the reason that they did that, the reason they forced it, is because they thought if they gave us an option, everyone would turn it off and nobody would use it.
I mean, we're not wrong.
No, but they are wrong. Because, you know, I can tell you there are hundreds of us that are sat there like, you're going to give us a controller that's a Pokeball, and you think we won't want to do a throwing motion with that.
Yeah.
Like I understand for some people it's not, it doesn't appeal to them. That is like one of my favorite things about this game is having an actual Pokeball to throw. But I am frustrated because if you get someone who can't physically make that motion or can't hold their hand steady enough for it on the handheld, they basically can't play this game. It's a major accessibility issue that they created for no reason.
Well, the thing is, like, the gyro in handheld, you can use the analog stick to aim it, and then the gyro is just for precision aiming. So there's no reason they couldn't have done that in regular mode and just used it using the analog.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, is the mechanic is in the game. They could have easily made it accessible to everyone, but because they wanted the motion control to be there, and the problem is they're working off of they look at Splatoon where everyone turns off the motion control because most people can't stand it, but this is a different kind of thing. Like, a lot of people wanted the motion control, but a lot of people can't use the motion control.
The thing is, does it even matter if people use it or not? I mean, if the game's still enjoyable, then it doesn't even really matter. I mean, like, even using the handheld mode and using the analog to do it, I still found it fun. Like, that was one of my gripes when it first got announced, was the fact that they did this catching minigame instead of wild battles. But when I actually played it, I thought, actually, I think I prefer this, because they've got more trainers in the main game, so you don't necessarily need to be fighting wild Pokemon, apart from like special event Pokemon like Snorlax and Mewtwo and things like that. And I think this catching minigame helps to add a little bit of variety to the game, and it only really benefits it because the combo system's quite addictive, and it's a nice way to break up the game. And I kind of wish that they'd incorporate into the main games as well. Like, I know Sword and Shield is going to be like, random Pokemon fights, and that's fine, but I think that when it comes to playing Sword and Shield, I'm just going to get tired of that, because it's just pretty much the same as a trainer battle, apart from I can run away from it.
Yeah. I mean, I just really hope that if we get more Let's Go games, that they
add the option.
They added in the option to do it without motion controls for the people that can't use the motion controls.
They're talking about, you mentioned, like, I don't know why they did this. This is Nintendo who is supervising this. Game Freak obviously made the game, but Nintendo is the director of the game, essentially. They were also the same people who forced the weird motion control aiming in Star Fox Zero.
Yeah.
And there wasn't an option to not.
Yeah, and look how well that did.
Yeah, and it was like, and Star Fox Zero was a lot of fun, except for the mandatory motion aiming. And sometimes it was fine, and then other times where it's like, no, I have to be using this, and I wish I was just steady. I would rather just sit down and play Star Fox 64.
Yep.
Yeah. Another thing that I think was a good idea, but not really incorporated well, was the co-op. Like, it was a good idea because it's drop-in, drop-out co-op.
Yes.
And during battles, or during the catching, they're basically a second person. So during catching, they can throw another Pokeball at the same time. You can get, like, a special combo if you throw at the same time, which, if you're playing solo, you can completely abuse to catch Pokemon perfectly, which is great for catching chances. And if you're fighting a trainer, then they'll use the second Pokemon in your Pokemon bag. The problem is twofold. One, during trainers, the trainers have the exact same Pokemon. So it makes trainer battles really easy. And I think that maybe the trainers should have sent out 2 at a time, even if it's just a duplicate of something they already have, or whether it's the second Pokemon in their list, just to make it a little bit more difficult. And the fact that in the overworld, the second person can't do anything. Like, if they walk into a Pokemon, nothing happens. If they try and talk to a person, nothing happens. They're basically like a ghost. And I kind of think that they could have done a bit more to it to make it a bit more interactive for a second person. Like, I played a little bit with my girlfriend, and she was just a little bit bored, to be honest. And I kind of think that if they give the second person a bit more to do, it would have been a bit better. I mean, it's not like Mario Odyssey where you just control the fucking hat, but, it's still not quite there.
Now, you'd be amazed at things you can do with that hat. No, but the co-op thing was one of the main reasons we wanted to get this. Because me and my fiance both play Pokemon Go, on and off. And when we heard about this, it's like, oh, there's something we can do together. And then exactly what you described, she was second player and just kind of got bored because you don't do anything outside of the battles.
Yeah. You don't even have to do anything. Like, you could just stay there and just let the other person do everything until you get into a battle. There's nothing for you to do. Yeah,
because, it'll automatically warp you to them if they go off screen. Yeah. And, basically...
I think warping to them is fine because it's better than either killing the person or, getting it to where you can't move until the person's next to you.
Right. But yeah, they basically got to the co-op mode in Fable 2.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been talking a lot. We've been talking for almost an hour just about some of the mechanics and how they're different. But we've not actually talked about the game itself. So, especially Matt, because this is your first experience, really. What do you actually think of the story?
I actually don't remember too much of the story. It seemed like quite a simple kind of thing.
There's not much of a story. It's more just kind of a reason to do things. But what do you think of the story experience, shall we say?
I did enjoy it. I enjoyed going around, going to the gyms and battling the guys and finding out how to get to all the different cities, and it was an interesting kind of thing.
So how many gyms have you actually beaten?
I got up to the one with all the teleports. The one after you've liberated Silphco.
Front City.
But I did them in a slightly different order, so I think I've done one more gym than I am supposed to have done at that point.
Yeah, it gets to a point where you can actually do some gyms out of order. Like, normally I leave Sabrina until quite late, as late as possible, just because I'm used to Gen 1 where she's, ridiculously powerful. And I think that I fear her for no reason now. Did you actually beat Sabrina, or did you just get to the gym?
I just got to the gym. I didn't actually beat it.
So which is your favourite of the gym leaders so far, then?
My favourite? It's actually been a few months since I played it, but I think the one...
The one in the swimming pool?
No, that one was a pain in the arse.
No, screw Misty and her Staryu.
No, don't screw Misty.
Can't remember the name of the move, but water type that burns. Forget that. Scald, yeah. There you go.
I think my favourite one was actually the one with the guy who had the two fighting Pokemon, and you got to choose one of them at the end.
Oh, the dojo.
Fighting dojo, yeah.
Dojo, yeah.
That's the one where it's we can't quite be a gym, we're not good enough to be a gym. That went to the psychic team next door, but you can fight us anyway. Yeah, he's pretty cool.
But to me, the reason that I'm having trouble kind of differentiating them is because they're not that different, really. It's just they've got different Pokemon, basically, and different ways to actually get to the main trainer. One of them's got this really awful maze that you've got to go around.
The poison one. Yeah, that's a pain in the ass.
But they are quite samey, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of get that. I kind of find that their actual lineup of Pokemon is the most interesting thing about the gyms, rather than the actual gyms themselves, particularly in Generation 1. Lieutenant Surge is notorious for being a bit of a pain in the ass. It's definitely a lot better in Let's Go because it's not as difficult, the puzzle. But if you play Gen 1 with those bloody bins, you have to basically press 2 bins. And in 2 bins there are 2 switches. But they're random. All you know is that one is going to be adjacent to the other. But if you get the wrong one, it resets and they're in completely different places. So you pretty much just have to press them all until you get lucky. It's the worst. But yeah, I rather enjoyed it. They didn't add as much to the story as I thought they would. like I thought there would be additional things, like you get the Sevi Islands, I think it's called, in the Gen 3 remake, and they didn't have that. And they didn't really have any extra areas. They just had more trainers, from what I believe, and no, like, new things. But the game was still long enough. I mean, I played through the game, and I must have put in close to 20 hours or something by the time I reached the end. And, yeah, I was quite surprised. I thought because this is a game that I've played again and again and again, I'll be able to blast through it in a couple of hours. But, I took a fair amount of time with the game, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I've actually currently put in over 100 hours into the game.
I've probably put in about 30.
Just still a fair amount of time considering you've not beat it yet.
Yeah.
What about you guys, you Americans? What do you think of the actual main game itself? You played Gen 1 before, so what do you think about the main game compared to the likes of, say, Red and Blue?
It's obviously very similar. I do like the extra trainers, particularly the coach trainers that you get every so often that are a good way to kind of gauge your progress.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that coach trainers should be every trainer. Because I think that when it comes to other trainers, they usually have like 1, maybe 2 Pokemon, and the Pokemon are very low level. And I kind of think that it makes them more of a chore than anything. So you'll face a trainer and you'll just beat him for the sake of beating him. And it sort of feels like you're just taking out this trainer for the sake of taking out this trainer.
Yeah.
And when it comes to coach trainers, it actually feels like a proper battle. And I kind of think that trainers should be like that in the future. I mean, like, if they're going to have wild Pokemon battles again in further Pokemon games, those are just going to be fighting Pokemon for the sake of fighting Pokemon. So they really should have trainers with, like, good AI and, an actual, team of Pokemon just to make the battles a bit different from the wild battles, really. Fair enough early in the game, have them simple, but as you get to, like, the halfway point, they should all start putting up a challenge, but they just don't.
And I do agree. I think a lot of them, it's just like, and hopefully we'll see more of that going forward, just because, there's only so much you can do with, 2 Rattatas. And, the guy that shows up with 5 Magikarps, like, he's got bigger problems than his, battle strategies.
Yeah. I mean, like, even if they just did, like, difficulty modes for Pokemon games where the hard mode, the AI is stepped up a level and they start using clever moves rather than just spamming tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. Even if it was just for hard mode, so, for veterans, to make it a little bit more interesting for them. Because I feel like the battles are probably the weakest point, apart from the coach trainers and the gym leaders. The regular battles just kind of feel like they're there. But I think that's more of a problem with the Pokemon series rather than anything else. But maybe it's just the more I learn about the Pokemon mechanics, the easier it's become. And I know how to do, get a proper team and make a really good team. But the fact is I'll never get the chance to use it because the opponents are mostly shit.
That was my one bugbear with the game, to be honest, the battles. Because you go around some areas and there's just tons and tons and tons of guys. And you're trying to sneak past them because it's like, I really don't want to deal with you right now. And they turn around just as you're walking past them. And as soon as they make eye contact, you're in a battle. And like I say, in some areas there's absolutely tons of them. And as much as I'll never tire of the guys when you finish saying you got 2 great balls, it does still irk me having to do that many in a row.
But that's the thing. I don't think you're alone in that. I mean, I get to a point as well, like at the start of the game, no. But then, like, later in the game, you get to some routes where there's so many trainers that you do start to try and sneak past them. And I think that's indicative of a problem. Because, as you say, they're more of a pain in the ass than anything. Matt, did you actually fight any of the coach trainers?
Yeah.
And what do you think of those battles comparison?
I do agree with you, it's kind of like a bit more involved and stuff like that. And I can see why you'd want more of the battles to be like that. But if more of the battles were like that, then there would need to be
Fewer
less.
trainers. Well, the reason why there are so many trainers in this is because they removed the wild battles. So they wanted to give people a reason to battle. So they added more trainers. Normally there aren't so many trainers. And I do agree with you. I think having more intelligent trainers, but fewer trainers, especially if you're going to have wild Pokemon battles, I think that's definitely the way the games need to go going forward. If they want to, remain more interesting. Because it does get to a point where, as you say, you kind of want to sneak past them. So it's just like, I know what this guy's going to have. This guy's going to have the same as the last guy. This guy's going to have the same as the next guy. And I'm just going to have to fight it. It's going to be relatively straightforward. It's just going to be a waste of 2-3 minutes. And I think that's an issue.
I understand that they wanted a way to put the battles in, but I think they went a little over the top with the amount. They should have been a little bit less.
But the thing is, you get so little XP from battling, and you get so much XP from catching, that they sort of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. Because there's not really any reason for you to do so many battles, because the battles are pointless. You can rematch gym leaders and the Elite Four, but there's no point. You can just catch Pokemon and get catch combos and stuff like that and do that instead. So the battles are just kind of there for the sake of it. I think that in the post-game, if you want to battle, really you're best off just battling friends. Despite that, I still found it to be a really good game, and I would say that Let's Go is probably my favourite version of Gen 1, my favourite version of the Kanto region. I definitely want to see more going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely be picking up another one if they come out with one.
I would not mind seeing a gold silver.
I'd love that.
See, my only question is going to be, what Pokemon do they use as the mascots? Because, Pikachu and Eevee was an easy one to do. What do they do for future generations?
I suppose do what they normally do. And, if you think about it, with Pokemon Red and Blue, they had the starters. You had Charmander and Squirtle. And in this, you've got the starters, you've got Pikachu and Eevee.
So they just go to the legendaries for the next...
So they could do Ho-Oh and Lugia, I suppose. And just do legendaries again.
Here's the legend. Here's a nearly god tier Pokemon. Just here, go have it.
Yeah, they could do that. They might just give it colours like Let's Go Gold, Let's Go Silver, maybe, and then just have the legendary Pokemon on the front, or just the starters on the front, maybe. Gold and Silver, I suppose. Ho-Oh and Lugia probably more appropriate.
Yeah,
they could Pichu and Marill, maybe. I don't know. But the thing is, that'd be a pain in the ass, because you got friendship with Pichu and Marill. No one wants to evolve using friendship. But I suppose if they made it easier so it did evolve around level 15, then I don't suppose it'd be that much of an issue, maybe.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is that they didn't think that this was going to go over well, so they're just okay, let's just do the one, and then...
Which is Pikachu and Eevee as the mascots.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my main concern with the next generation is that's when they introduced breeding and the eggs.
Yeah.
And you've got the baby Pokemon, so you sort of need eggs in there. But I don't want to go back to breeding. With catch combos, there's no real reason to have it. So I think maybe just have it in as a storyline thing where you get hold of eggs, which contain the baby Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way you can get a baby Pokemon is by getting an egg. But then when it comes to getting, competitive Pokemon, you can still use the catch combos. I don't know. And speaking of competitive, did anyone try the multiplayer? Either with friends or with random battles or whatever?
Nope.
No, it's not anything I ever got into.
I don't have Switch Online, so no.
Fair enough. Yeah, I tried. It's very, very bare bones. It's pretty much, you can have level 50 battles, which are without EVs and stuff. So if you've not used candies to get the stats up to maximum, it doesn't really matter. And then you've got level 100 battles, which include EVs. So it's pretty much anything goes. And that's your options. The options are extremely limited. Battling's still really fun, but there's very little to it. It's bare bones. I'd say it's fine, it's functional for basic battling, but I kind of hope with Sword and Shield they step up their game a bit. I was hoping that with Let's Go Pikachu they'd have a variety of different multiplayer options, but there's nothing. So yeah, just thought I'd touch on that before we move on. Anyway, anyone got anything else to mention about the game?
No, I'd just like to see another one. Maybe not like this year or next year, but here in a couple years, I would not be against another game coming out at all.
I'd like one next year, but I wouldn't mind waiting until 2021 if they wanted to do like another spin-off or something in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
Fine with that. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good game.
Okay, so it seems like we all enjoyed that one then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So we're off to a good start then. Shall we move on to the next game?
I
Yeah,
think
sounds good.
fine.
Let's do it.
So we will move on to my pick. Captain, what's that? It's something radical. Odyssey Xtreme 2019 podcast. My pick for this month is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. This is a kind of prequel game to the upcoming Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. This was actually created due to one of the Kickstarter goals, the stretch goals, and that goal was to create kind of like a retro style accompaniment to the game. So that is why this game exists. I'm not sure if the same characters are used, but certainly some of the bosses are definitely being reused in Ritual of the Night if the trailer is anything to go by. It kind of looks like an NES game. It really nails the kind of aesthetic and gameplay. It mostly mirrors the look of Castlevania 3 quite a bit. The creator, Koji Igarashi, which I've probably just mispronounced.
No, you got it.
He is the guy who created Symphony of the Night, and he kind of like made just this amazing Castlevania game, and he didn't really like the direction that Konami had gone with the series, so he kind of broke off and decided that he was going to do his own retro style Castlevania game. Obviously he couldn't use a Castlevania name, that's why this is called Bloodstained, and it really, really does capture the feel quite a bit of the early NES games. And looking at the trailer for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, that looks like it really captures the essence of Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, it's funny how you say that, because Ritual of the Night looks basically like Symphony of the Night, but with a kind of modern coat of paint. And this is more like, is it Castlevania 3?
Yes.
I'm thinking of. So it's quite interesting how he's chosen two periods of Castlevania history and are basically mimicking those styles with his new games, which is totally fine by me because, you know, they're pretty damn good games.
This game is like, it is Castlevania in all but name. The gameplay is like so close to it. I'm surprised that Konami aren't suing, to be honest.
Going through Curse of the Moon is almost just like booting up Castlevania, except it's a bit more forgiving. That's it. It's Castlevania, but a touch more forgiving.
Yeah.
And it's even got the option to be even more forgiving, because you've got like an original mode, and then you've got like a, you know, a not idiot mode where you don't get like all the knockback and everything.
I played on the idiot mode, obviously.
Yeah, I played on the idiot mode as well because knockback is bullshit.
There are sections in that game where I was thinking to myself, if knockback existed here, I would be throwing my controller out the window.
But it's good because knockback was one of those stupid mechanics that was really stupid. Yet I can imagine how people wanting to go for that old school feel would probably like having the knockback. So having those two different options is just a brilliant idea. If you like that bullshit, there you go.
The knockback was a relic from the first Castlevania, where it was critical to the design of the game. Like everything in that game was so well thought out and so planned out that when they just brought things from that game to the later games, they felt out of place because the games weren't designed around them. You know, the game was designed around clunky whip controls and that weird knockback and everything. And it just doesn't work in other games that aren't specifically designed around those things.
But I think the problem with that, though, is that even when you've got the levels designed around it, it's still one of those things where every time it happens to you and you get knocked back and knocked into a pit, it feels like the worst possible death that could happen to you. It feels like complete bullshit rather than your own fault. Even though, as you say, the game is designed to take that into consideration.
No, I'm totally with you. It's just that, that's why they did it, and why
definitely.
they continue to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I can even appreciate why some people like having it in. Me, personally, I like having the option to not have it. But, when it's in games, I'm kind of fine with it. But it doesn't make it any less irritating when it happens.
And there are, of course, complete playthroughs, like no damage knockback runs on YouTube as well. Well, I mean, they didn't take any damage, so you can't see the knockbacks on, but...
Yeah, I was going to say, how do
you
know if it's no damage?
Well, they show you the option screen when they're kind of like starting it up.
Okay.
But there are some skilled people out there, and those people are going to kind of like relish that kind of challenge of having the harder, more retro mode.
Yeah, so I appreciate that the option's there because I think a lot of people want it. As I'm getting older, I'm kind of getting more turned off with that kind of thing. I mean, just as one example, I've been playing the Mega Man X Legacy Collection 2, and I've gone through Mega Man X6, and if it wasn't for Rookie Hunter mode, I'd have just not bothered. So having that option there just to make it easier so you can get through it, it's just a lot less hassle in it.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned on previous episodes that even on the rookie modes, the Mega Man games are kind of like way too hard for me.
Yeah, but it's still good there's an option to make it easier, because imagine if you didn't have that option and we were playing like the original version, how far would you get then?
Curse of the Moon I wasn't able to get all the way through. I actually got up to the first castle level, the boss that has the umbrellas that you've got to stand on.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't get past that boss, so I wasn't able to kind of see what was after that.
I've kind of found with these bosses, perseverance is the main thing, because the more you do it, the more the patterns start to click with you, and then it just gets easier, but you do have to persevere.
I think there was just way too much things going on in that fight, because you get these kind of golems that spawn at the bottom, and you've got the projectiles, and you've got kind of a big wall of light as well, which you've got to avoid, as well as trying to get up on the umbrellas to kind of hit her. It was just a bit too much visual information for me. But speaking of the bosses, I mentioned earlier that it looks like they're going to be reusing some of the bosses. I don't know if you noticed, in the Ritual of the Night trailer, we did actually see that two-headed dragon at one point.
Well,
Yes.
I have a feeling that Ritual of the Night is probably going to be linked in to the storyline of this, so it's probably going to be revisiting the same castle, maybe, or the same kind of areas, which would explain why you do fight some of those bosses. And after all, I mean, Curse of the Moon really is a kind of a promotional kind of thing more than anything, to get people kind of hyped up for Ritual of the Night.
It's described as a prequel.
Yeah, it's a prequel, but I think they kind of released it as a kind of a promotional type thing.
They did just release it on Xbox Live for free for Gold members
Yes, they did.
last month or so. It's pretty quick.
And guess what game's around the corner?
When is Ritual of the Night actually out, by the way?
I think it's start of the summer or something. So I'm wanting to say June or something.
On the Wikipedia page, it just says Q3, but that may have been changed recently.
Yeah, from what I can see on here, it says Ritual of the Night is set to arrive in summer 2019.
Yeah, so probably July, August kind of time.
Yeah.
So how far do you guys get?
I've beaten it. Well, I've beaten the first storyline, but I'm going to wait until you guys say how far you got before I go into any more information.
Well, I didn't get super far. I ended up not having a lot of time for this one, which is a shame because I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I didn't get all that far. I only made it a few levels in.
I think I got about 5 bosses in, and then I started realizing that there are actually alternate paths and whatnot, especially as you unlock other characters that you can go run with. So I started going back and just kind of exploring the maps and taking in the game.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I really liked. There are kind of different paths that you can take, and you do need one of the characters usually to get to this other path. So as long as you have that character, I mean, if if that character is dead at that point, then you have to kind of like go the normal way. They give you a normal way which you can do with all the characters, but the alternate route, you'll usually only be able to use one character to get to it, which there's not usually anything. A lot of them are like secret areas. There are kind of like alternate paths as well. It's just a really nice little touch to give you a choice of how you progress and makes it feel not so linear, because it is generally a linear game.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it opens up a lot on the second playthrough, because in the second playthrough, you actually get the extra characters at the start. So those alternate paths that you saw in the earlier levels that you weren't able to access, you can actually access them in your second playthrough, so you don't have to revisit them. You're actually doing that from scratch. And there's also like an extra plot line in the second story, which may be linked to the main game. You sort of see one of the villains, and I won't say anymore, but there's a villain that you need to fight in the second story, and I think that might be part of the Ritual of the Night story.
All right.
I've not been in the second playthrough yet, so I'm not sure how that pans out, because, maybe I'm completely wrong, but yeah, play through it, see what you think. I don't want to say more to spoil it, because it's a nice twist.
Previously, we've covered games that have train levels, and I can't remember who, but one of us has spoken out about how they love train. I know I like train levels, but
I don't think I said I like train levels, but I think there have been a few games that we've covered where I've liked the train levels.
Maybe that's what it is.
Mega Man X4 and in Turtles.
I just absolutely loved the train level. And that was like the second stage, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But the boss, I thought it was just, like, visually the game's amazing because it does just nail down, like, Castlevania 3. But
and
the boss itself
really
was
beautiful.
Yeah, no, and the boss, I love the boss where he's just shoveling in coal. Spoiler alert.
Did you guys get to the money boss?
I love that boss.
Yeah, he was a great boss. Like, the guy's just attacking you with piles of money, and then he's, bringing his hands across the screen, just moving all this money, and you've got to climb on top of it to get to him. Really cool boss.
Which is funny because it's kind of an odd-looking boss compared to the rest of the game because it's all bright and shiny.
Yeah.
And he's not, like, super intimidating looking. Cause he's
no, he's not. He's a bit goofy looking.
Yeah, but I love it.
Yeah, definitely.
The boss designs in general were kind of like really good. The only boss that I had trouble with up to the one that I couldn't beat was the second one. The one that summons the blue orbs all around him. I had trouble with that one.
Okay, yeah, no, I think the train was the first level, and that dude was the second level.
Yeah. I
died, and I was doing the easy mode, and I had to restart it, and I almost died beating him the second time.
It took me about 4 tries on that second boss.
Yeah, when I replayed the game, I got to that boss and died quite a few times before I could get past it. Even though I'd already beaten him on a previous attempt. It still took a while to get back into the swing of things because it's quite unforgiving.
You kind of want to have certain side weapons on your characters to properly face that boss.
Oh yeah, and also make sure you do have side characters, because once they start dying and you end up having to restart and having fewer characters, it just becomes harder. So you need to make use of switching characters before they die, so you can make the most of them.
One thing that I quite liked about the character switching mechanic, I think it only happens with one character, but the alchemist, if you cast his protective ring around him, if you then switch to another character, you'll keep your protective ring. And I think that only happens with that one move on that one character.
I never even tried that, to be honest.
Where you can carry on the special move onto another character.
Never tried it. Which one was your favourite character?
The vampire guy for me. Mostly because he's kind of like walking around with his arms folded, just looking all moody. And then he just opens his cape and just releases bats out of him. And I love that.
That's pretty cool. For me, it's Whip Girl.
Same Whip Girl, because it just really finished off the Castlevania feel.
Yeah, because she felt like a Castlevania character. She felt like a cross between Simon Belmont and Shanoa. And I'm quite glad that she's the protagonist of Ritual of the Night.
Oh, is she?
I believe so. The main character in Ritual of the Night is I think she's called Miriam or something. It's a girl at any rate. So.
Oh, that is her name in Curse of the Moon.
There you go, it's her then. So presumably she fights with a whip and stuff. I can't remember the trailer off the top of my head, because it's been a while.
Yeah, I was really into Miriam.
Oh, I bet you were.
Well, hey.
Wait.
I also quite like the vampire dude. I liked how he could turn into a bat.
Yeah, because like, if there's like a really difficult platforming section, you can just decide, I don't want to deal with this, and just fly over it. One thing I also really liked about the bosses as well, just going back to the bosses, when you do actually kill them, they do like one last super powerful move at the end, after you've dealt them enough damage. Kind of like a finishing move, but as they're dying, which I thought was quite cool.
Oh, yeah. That was cool.
Well, aren't you able to interrupt it? Like, you can get... It's like when they're on, like, 1 HP, they'll release that, but you can stop it.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, it does do a fair amount of damage, but they die immediately after.
I'm only recalling from watching a Games Done Quick, where they did Curse of the Moon, and he really slammed through a couple of the bosses before they could even really do anything.
There are probably ways that you can exploit it for speedrunning, but I'm not personally sure how to interrupt them. But they look cool anyway. They're like, visually, that finishing move on most of the bosses is kind of like really nice.
If we're going to talk about Castlevania games here, essentially, let's talk about the music in this game. It was fantastic.
Oh, it was.
So good.
Who actually composed the music? Apparently it's the same guy who composed the music in Bloodlines, Symphony of the Night, Area of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, he did a whole bunch of Castlevania games. That makes sense.
Yeah, and Castlevania games are great audio.
It looks like quite a few people worked on the music, but Michiru Yamane is the main composer. But you also have Ippo Yamada, Aoi Takeda, Takumi Sato, Hiroki Sano, Ryo Kawakama, and Ryo Yoshinaga. It looks like those are the guys responsible for the music in the game. And I would like to formally apologize to all the Japanese listeners for all the names that I've destroyed there.
All 0 of the Japanese listeners.
We can dream, damn it. We're edgy now.
Yeah.
We have a lot of listeners in the Middle East, but I'm not sure if we have any in Japan.
All listeners in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Well, listeners in the Middle East, we're so sorry for butchering a bunch of Japanese names.
Exactly.
Honestly, this came out free, like I said, on Xbox, but because I want to go through and get both run-throughs and maybe even try it on a harder difficulty, because, I'm into self-punishment sometimes. I actually did pre-order this. It's getting a physical edition on all your main platforms, including Switch, and I pre-ordered up a copy for Switch. It's only $30, so...
I'll probably pre-order Ritual of the Night, but I already have Curse of the Moon on PS4, so I don't need a physical one.
Is the next game coming out on Switch too?
It is, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's coming out on everything, as far as I'm aware.
Honestly, because we're not getting lots of Castlevania these days, I kind of hope that Bloodstained takes off as a new series. Especially if Ritual of the Night does well. I'd like to see this go somewhere. I would also like to point out really quick, kind of a little tangent, but also related, that Bloodstained, the way that this panned out, is the exact opposite of how Mighty Number 9 panned out.
Oh, yeah. Oof.
Like, the original creator of Mega Man, who I cannot remember his name.
Who wasn't the actual original creator, but...
Well, he goes, man, Capcom's not letting me make Mega Man games, so I'm just going to go make my own Mega Man game that's not Mega Man. And he put out a horrible game.
I'll make my own Mega Man game with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, and Mighty Number 9 is it's not good.
Not to mention that they insulted their target audience in the marketing as well.
Yeah, but what made that even better is then that happened, and Capcom spun around and made Mega Man 11 without him.
Just to show that they could do it, even though the other guy couldn't.
And it's good.
Yeah.
Mega Man, it may not be the best Mega Man game, but it is a very good Mega Man game.
I'd say it's up there in the top tier.
Yeah,
it's rubbish, but it's still pretty damn good.
Yeah. The mechanics are interesting. It captures the spirit.
I've got my hopes up for Ritual of the Night.
So.
I mean, he's put out Curse of the Moon, and that was fantastic. So that kind of works as a proof of concept. If you can do that, then, hopefully Ritual of the Night's something special as well.
Well, and that's the whole thing is Kickstarter games. Like we had a few really high profile things. Like we had Shenmue 3. We had one we're going to talk about here in a bit. Mighty Number 9. All like they either flopped or were marred by shady stuff going on. So this was kind of like the last hope for Kickstarter video games to not die off.
It is kind of like one of those success stories that show that it can be done.
It's got my vote.
And hopefully Ritual of the Night will stand up to games like Symphony of the Night, just like Curse of the Moon stands up to the original Castlevania games.
If he nailed it this well, I'm almost afraid that we'll get into Ritual of the Night, and it will be too close to Symphony of the Night. It'll be too much. Where we're going on playing this game, but it's like I've already played Symphony of the Night.
Well, looking at the trailer, there are certainly like 2.5D elements in it as well.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be entirely like
Visually,
the same kind
no.
of thing gameplay-wise. But honestly, I'd be happy to play another Symphony of the Night in a new coat skin.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I did thoroughly enjoy Harmony of Dissonance, and that was just other Symphony of the Night. So it was Symphony of the Night with a whip run. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I'll retract my statement for now.
I think it's fair to say that we all definitely enjoyed this one then.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, the only sin that this game made, and given the fact that it was, especially since I've initially played it for free, and it was supposed to be a short introduction, is that it is pretty short. It does have a replay value where you can go through again and find like all these super secret routes with other characters, where these like the slide and all that. You have to get under like little doors and all that goodness. But its only sin is that you can get through it pretty quickly.
Honestly, it's about the length of the NES Castlevania games.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't feel like it because the NES Castlevania games, you'll die 30 times on one level in the original Castlevania until you figure it out.
Yeah, I have done. I can attest to that.
That's where they got gameplay length out of in the old NES games, was they just beat you to death. And Curse of the Moon, while it is definitely difficult in its own right, it is not that punishing.
Well, yeah, because there's no more quarters to steal.
It is true, though. This is true. But I mean, like, one error out of... And it's not even a true error, because, again, this was not intended to be, like, a massive game. So, really, I'm just whining that it's not longer. I wish it was longer. And it was not intended to be. So I'm just being a little whiner here.
It was just kind of, like, intended to be, like, a bit of a spin-off for Kickstarter backers.
So with that, I'll retract my initial statement, and I hope this isn't the theme now.
It's rest.
Okay, I think that wraps us up for Curse of the Moon. And I think we'll move on to Ryan's pick.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, indeed. Odyssey Xtreme 2019 podcast.
Cowabunga, dudes.
Curse of the Moon, I mentioned I was maybe a touch worried that its follow-up would be too similar to Symphony of the Night, and then I redacted that statement. But speaking of things being too similar to what they're imitating, my pick of the month was Yooka-Laylee. It was made by Playtonic and released in 2017. Playtonic was a group that was comprised of all the people who worked on, or most of the people who worked on games like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. I believe also Donkey Kong Country, and that's game designers, music composers, and what their goal was to recreate the Rare Collectathon. And they didn't just capture it in spirit, they basically copy-pasted Banjo-Kazooie and almost just reskinned it.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of these devs, they, did work on Banjo-Kazooie, and I think they just thought, fuck it, we'll just copy and paste, change a few assets, job's good. And
No, yeah, that's basically it.
I mean,
That's what happened.
even the characters. I mean, like Laylee, the bat, is effectively Kazooie. Like, personality-wise,
Yeah.
she's basically the same.
Very sarcastic
Yeah.
and blunt.
What I will say, though, is that the villainous side of things, capital B, I did like having that kind of mega corporation villain type thing rather than, like a witch or whatever. I think it did work quite well. And I also think that it kind of worked well because it seemed like they were kicking back at Microsoft. Because there's a lot of digs at Microsoft in the game. I mean, like, if you've noticed, like, the little robots in it are basically just Kinects, which obviously are a big bugbear for Rare because they were forced to do Kinect shit for Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I did kind of like that element of it, at least. I actually quite like Trouser, and I actually do like a lot of the characters in this game.
It took me about 30 seconds to figure out what the play on Trouser.
Really?
Like, it just went right over my head for a
Trouser
second.
snake.
I'm like, wait a minute, he's a trouser snake.
Oh, right. I just got that.
No, they were not shy of they definitely took a little bit from, like, the humor from Conkers and slipped in a lot of subtle adult humor into Ukulele, which I appreciated. Especially since it wasn't just, like, in the case of Conker, it's just crude for the sake of being crude.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that the writing in this game is generally pretty good. I can't really fault much of the writing.
Oh,
I think
no.
it's relatively strong. I mean, it's that kind of cheesy storyline that links to, like, a 90s collector's own platformer. And I think it pretty much elicits that vibe perfectly.
Well, and the game is insanely self-aware, too. They kick down the fourth wall right out of the gate.
To a quite annoying amount, I found.
Well, with the fourth wall breaking? Or
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it went a bit overboard.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes. I honestly didn't have too much of a problem with it. I think that the annoying part was more to do with the voices, which they weren't the best. I mean, normally, like in the Banjo games, Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie had pretty good garbly voices for the most part. You had the occasional person that, had a bad voice, and in the Game Boy Advance Banjo-Kazooie game, like the mole in that's got like a really annoying voice. And Ukulele's more in line with that.
Well,
it's like
the other...
is a really kind of squawky.
I thought the voices were fine. The problem is there's about twice as much talking as there is in Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think it could be to do with the longer dialogues.
In DK64, there's quite a bit of dialogue when you're talking to various NPCs around the world. Whether it be Cranky or Funky or whoever it is, and you're getting your stuff. There can be quite a bit of dialogue there, but they skipped the squawky voices.
Yeah.
And I think they did that intentionally because they're like, oh man, this would wear on you pretty quick.
Yeah. In fairness to them, they did patch it out and make it so that you get like a little bit of squawking and then it stops. Mm. And I sort of think that's what they should have done in the first place. Like, have like a little bit of squawking and then stopping, and then when the next text box comes up, then do like a little bit again.
Just non-stop.
But it's like little bits. But yeah, it's just continuous screeching.
And,
I mean, I didn't really have much of an issue when I first played it, but when I replayed the game, it was just like, I'm going to have to turn on the minimal voices or whatever it was called.
I mean, there's a couple things where, like, one of the biggest sins that this game, committed was it wasn't that it imitated necessarily Banjo-Kazooie, it's that it imitated everything from Banjo-Kazooie. The very fact that the standard camera mode automatically writes itself behind you.
Yeah.
This is a modern 3D platformer. It's pretty clear that auto-writing cameras are not optimal because it'll autocorrect, and then you'll walk off a cliff, especially if you're trying to do some really, like, high wire walking. And you have to go and turn that off. It's an option in the menu, thankfully, because I was actually hating the game until I found that option. And it just made it
Again,
so much better.
That was a patch. It wasn't like that from the start. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of an annoying thing. I mean, I get that they were trying to go for that whole 90s vibe with a 90s camera, but I think there are some things that you shouldn't bring forward, even if you're trying to do a nostalgic thing, because you can do it better. I mean, cameras were bad back then because 3D games were new and nobody knew how to do it properly. But in this day and age,
20 years later,
there's no reason for it. I mean, the Hat in Time dev basically said that. They were like, there's no reason to have an old school camera in the game. We're going to work on making the camera as modern and as functional as possible, because you can have an old school style game that doesn't annoy the piss out of you because it's not functional. I mean, you look at Hat in Time, you look at Mario Odyssey, those are games that are very reminiscent of that era, but they, from a mechanical point of view, in terms of controls and camera, they work fine.
However, you can go back as far as Super Mario 64, which was one of the first 3D platformers, and the camera in Yooka-Laylee is worse than that. And I'll tell you why, because when you have a camera system that you can freely rotate around your character, the camera is essentially like an object in the world that you can manipulate. When your camera is rotating and it hits a bit of scenery, what it will do is it will move the camera closer to your character and zoom in a little bit to go around the scenery. What Yooka-Laylee does in quite a lot of instances is the camera will just get stuck on the scenery and stop, and you won't be able to rotate it left or right. Well, you'll be able to rotate it the way back that it came, but you won't be able to rotate it any further unless you manually zoom in. And that is something that Super Mario 64 sorted out, back when that came out. And that is something that they, for some reason, were not able to fix in this particular game.
Well, yeah, and then Nintendo fixed the approach because in Super Mario 64, honestly, you couldn't move past certain scenery because they wouldn't let you zoom the camera in enough, and it just popped back around and just deny you because of the collisions. In Super Mario Sunshine, they fixed that by allowing you to pan the camera through scenery, and you couldn't see anything, but it would outline you in a shadow, so at least you knew where you were. And that's a good fix, too. And Yooka-Laylee did neither of those things.
Well, and this brings up basically the sum of my opinion on the game. If Yooka-Laylee had come out in 2001, it would have been fine. Coming out in 2017 in this state is unacceptable.
Sins that games could get away with before, you can't do now because it's an established genre and there's established mechanics that we know we avoid and we know to put in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big problem with Yooka-Laylee is that it had quite a long development cycle. So when people saw it, it was like, oh, they're bringing back this, this forgotten genre of games. Fantastic. But because it took a long period of time, other developers saw that enthusiasm and they started making it. So Yooka-Laylee released, and when I played it, I still enjoyed it. It's nowhere near as good as the other Banjo games, but I found it enjoyable. But then the problem is, shortly after, A Hat in Time released. Shortly after that, Mario Odyssey released. And both of those absolutely shit on Yooka-Laylee. And you kind of think that, okay, these three games came out in the same period of time, and Yooka-Laylee is so much inferior that even though it was okay, it was only okay for a very small window of time before you saw, okay, this is how you do it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think that it kind of got, left in the sidelines by those other games because they kind of showed it up a little bit, okay, that's cute. This is how you properly do one. And I kind of think that if Hat in Time didn't exist, if Mario Odyssey didn't exist, and that was all we had, people would say, okay, they've got the old-fashioned, control mechanisms and camera mechanisms, which might even be worse than, as you were saying, Mario 64. But, this is what we've got for this genre. This is a forgotten genre that's, been long forgotten since the early GameCube days. So it's still nice to have. we got other things, and then people saw it for what it really was, and it was like, yeah, maybe this isn't so good. I think some of the ideas that Ukulele had, it tried hard, and I think its heart was in the right place for a lot of it. I think some things like the camera, maybe they were just silly. Maybe they just thought, it'll be fine, we'll have an old school camera, people like it, it'll be fine. And they were just a little bit stupid, and they didn't think they needed to do a proper modern camera that was functional. But there we go. I think the heart was in the right place for like a lot of it, even though a lot of stuff they did was very flawed.
Well, and like, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said one of their biggest misses was with Trouser, where the most interesting thing about him is his name and the way he weaves into the pants. Once you get past that, it's, you know,
I mean, he's just a salesman.
Yeah, and like,
I mean,
you know,
he makes like, snake jokes and stuff, and his design is really cool, but that's all there is to him.
Yeah, like he could have been so much, you know, he could have had so much more impact.
He could have just been a much more interesting character, but like, you hit him up a whole bunch right in the beginning, and then once you get your mood, it's like, well, I'll come talk to you again when you fully refresh.
Even if they just included him in some of the cutscenes, to be honest, like the final cutscene, have him make an impact. Like he helps you during the final fight, for example, or something.
But I mean, that's kind of all down to issues with the writing, and honestly, I think the writing is fine for what it is. It's the game itself that I have an issue with. I mean, Steven said if this was released in 2001, it would be fine. I kind of disagree with that, because it's a copy of Banjo-Kazooie, and Banjo-Kazooie is a lot better than this, like a lot better. And stuff that Banjo-Kazooie did well,
this doesn't.
This doesn't, and it's kind of like there's no excuse for that.
I think that's the biggest flaw with this game, is that it tries to imitate Banjo-Kazooie or even Banjo-Tooie to an extent, and it copies things, but then gets them worse. Like the camera is worse than Banjo-Kazooie. The level design is worse than Banjo-Kazooie.
The level design is horrible.
Well, the thing is, the level design isn't so bad when it's the open area, when you've unlocked everything. The mini hub worlds, I mean, let's just talk about that for a moment. I mean, I thought that was a good idea, because you start out with a mini world, and in the mini worlds there's some things you can do, but not a lot. Once you get more pages, you can either use that page to unlock a different world, or you can expand the world and it becomes really big. So you effectively have a small world akin to like the Banjo-Kazooie, where everything's very self-contained, very easy to learn, and then you can expand it to the size of Banjo-Tooie, where it's a really vast environment. And I think that's a really good idea, because you can learn an environment, and once you're comfortable with it, you can expand it, and then you can increase your knowledge. But what it seems like is you've got this big world, and they've just removed a section. So you get to lots of roads, lots of pathways that lead to nowhere.
And they just stop.
Yeah, and like, for example, in the first world, there's only like a handful of characters there, and there's nothing really much to do. It kind of feels empty until you expand it. Like later on in the game, because I was trying to get 100% in each world before I moved on, thankfully I had enough to get the expanded world straight away, and that's basically just what I did, is I just expanded it as soon as possible, because the small worlds were just kind of pointless. I'd go to somewhere thinking, okay, I'll be able to get a pager here, and then I'd go over there, and there'd be nothing to do. And it looks like there should be something to do here. And obviously that only exists in the expanded world. And as I say, I think the concept is a great idea, because having these big open environments are definitely better in a modern game compared to the likes of Banjo-Kazooie, where the worlds are quite tiny comparatively. So having this expandable world, I think is a good idea, so people don't get lost. Because, I mean, Banjo-Tooie, I think is a fantastic game. I prefer it to the original game. But it's very difficult to learn the layout of the levels because it's so big. It's so complicated. And I think this was a nice way of approaching that, but they just fucked it up. And it wasn't just that the worlds themselves weren't particularly great. I think that as I say, what they did with the smaller world is it's just half there. It's missing a lot of things, and there's empty roads. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what the problem is with level navigation, really. If you go back to Banjo-Kazooie, you have your collectibles kind of like throughout the level, and they are in places where you need to go. The collectibles, the musical notes, those are kind of like laid out around the level in such a way that it kind of like guides you to places of interest. They are essentially kind of like... They're
effectively waypoints.
Yeah, they're waypoints essentially, and they help to guide you around the level. In Ukulele, they are just strewn all over the place in kind of like random places. In some places, there's kind of like one single collectible, like all the way back behind a massive building that you would never go around. They just throw them anywhere and everywhere with no regards to actually trying to guide you around the level, because I don't think they looked at Banjo-Kazooie and I think they missed the point of the collectibles in Banjo-Kazooie, and they just thought that the collectibles were there just to be collected. But in Banjo-Kazooie, they're there to help you navigate the level.
They're just there as like hidden items to collect in Ukulele, and it sort of reminds me of the coins in Super Mario Sunshine. Like, if you remember from Super Mario 64, you have to collect 100 coins. And the coins are everywhere. You kill enemies, you get coins. You find them in every which way. It's fair enough. You go into Super Mario Sunshine, it's like, I can't even fucking see any coins. Where are they? And you get, like, blue coins and stuff like that, which are worth more coins. And they're just kind of more hidden and in places that you won't necessarily be able to find. So you'll enter a level and you won't be able to see any coins there. And it's kind of like that with, as you say, with Ukulele, is that you'll go around and you're just kind of like, where the hell are they? Because these quills are just, as you say, they're just placed in places where you think, well, how was I supposed to think of looking there? Because it's like round the edge of the map, behind a building. Whereas, as you say in Banjo-Kazooie, it's used as a waypoint. It's used to lead you to where, you find the jiggies.
I mean, yeah, DK64 did the same thing where they would use banana trails.
Yeah.
And DK64 took it even one step further, where they would have all the different colored bananas in a level that each different member of the Kong crew can pick up.
Yeah.
And so you could run around with, I'll take Diddy over here, and then there's a string of blue bananas over here, so I need to go back at some point and bring Lanky.
Yeah.
Because they're guiding Lanky over here because he has something to do.
Yeah. And I think that's a great idea, because like in Banjo, you use the nose to open doors. So
it's subtle but useful level design.
Yeah, definitely. But here they don't really do that.
They don't, and that was one thing I was finding was that, just quills and pickups are just sort of strewn all over. If you explore, you'll find them all, but you just spend a lot of time wandering around on some of these big levels.
I mean, that's the game in a nutshell, is it just takes loads of elements from the rare platformers and just doesn't do them as good. I mean, the enemies in this are pretty dull. You've just got those, little caveman troll type things.
Well, to be fair, you only had, 2 enemies in Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, but at least they were a bit more, interesting and they would do stuff. I mean, they just kind of feel like they're there for the sake of it. Like the Clunger monster type things and stuff, or the spider type things. At least they seemed a little bit more interesting. And you got, level-specific ones. Like, as I say, you got the spider ones in Mumbo's Mountain. Whereas this, you've got those same enemies, and they're just in different clothes. And that's the only difference. And that's all the enemies you're getting. And it just kind of feels like they're just there.
The enemy that really, really, really pissed me off was those fucking bees. You know, the ones that kind of shoot the homing thing at you?
God.
Yeah.
And because the camera and the controls are both shit, you can't line yourself up properly to kind of bounce down on them, and you'll just hurt yourself doing it. So you've got the option of killing them before they take the shot, or trying to run away after they've taken the shot, and the shot is homing. So I just hated those enemies so much.
Yeah, I mean, like even the bosses are functional for the most part. I mean, I find that the final fight, the one against Capital B, is really good. It's really challenging, and it feels like the Gruntilda fights in Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. And whilst it's not as good as those, I would say it's still good enough to be considered a really good boss fight. But then, like, all the others are just kind of like there. I mean, like, you go in the casino, and it's on the minecart, and the minecart sections are fucking dreadful.
No,
it's like, these are the people that made DK64 that had great minecart sections, and these are nothing like that. How the hell do you mess that up? You know how to make a good minecart level. Just copy DK64 and do the same fucking thing, and you've got a good minecart section.
And those racing bits as well.
I did not like the racing bits at all.
They were terrible.
They were awful.
I didn't mind the racing things so much, but the minecart sections, because like you shoot, and you shoot in a straight line, but the track isn't 2D. The track kind of goes in like a 2.5D kind of perspective, where you go around corners and things. So you'll shoot an enemy, but because the enemy is around like a marginal corner, you'll just miss. So there's no point even trying to shoot enemies because you won't fucking hit them. And then you've got to collect all these gems, which there's so many to collect, and you've got to collect more or less all of them in order to pass. You've got to do
or just not hit anything.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not so bad if you're not going for 100%, but then on level 4, you need to beat the minecart thing just so you can fight the boss. But the minecart thing's so bloody hard that it's quite difficult to even see the boss. And then you do the boss, and it's more minecart stuff. And it's like, bloody hell. So, yeah, I think like the bosses and stuff are another thing which they tried to copy that style, but not really good enough.
I was not a fan of the bosses. Straight at the first boss you fight is the one in Tribal Stack Tropics, and you have when you roll up the hill over the logs.
Oh, I hated that.
It wasn't super hard. It was just really, really tedious. Because you couldn't just cruise up the hill. You had to cruise in and take a little hop and then roll a little bit and take another hop. And then when you get to the top, you just punch his teeth in and jump to the bottom and repeat. And it's just a very slow, tedious process.
The thing is with the hopping as well, which you have to do, the rolling, which you have to do up that hill, is for some reason, as soon as you go into a roll, your left and right movement becomes hypersensitive. Like, you've only got to look at the left button and you will go veering off. And when you're trying to go up that hill and the logs are coming down, you're having to avoid them, and you don't have that precise control. It is just an absolute nightmare.
You see, I think that the controls in general and the moves you have, including the roll and stuff like that, I think theoretically it works and would have been a good movement system. But it's just, as you say, it's too sensitive and it doesn't always work quite well enough. Like on the second level, there's one part where you have to navigate these dark caves and you have to jump on like these slanted rocks.
Oh, God.
Yeah, because they're slanted, you have to do it while you're rolling. And of course, you've got an energy bar, so you're timed until your energy runs out. So you've got to do like these running jumps, and you have to stop at a standstill in the middle, and then do that on the next one, and continue through. And it's something that theoretically shouldn't be that difficult to do, because if you have a grip with the controls, which I did at the time, then it's not difficult to do. But it's so easy to mess up, because as you say, it's like hypersensitive. It doesn't quite work as it should, that it feels like it's not quite there.
Yeah, and because of that sensitivity, I had a lot of issues, especially in the very first level. It's kind of like surrounded by a cliff, this level. And quite a few times I ended up kind of like falling off. But I didn't fall to my death. I fell on the edge of the cliff, and I landed on some like random ledge or something of the cliff. But there's no way to get back up.
So you have to kill yourself.
You have to throw yourself off and kill yourself. Even though you've kind of like landed in the level, you've landed on a ledge. It's like, why is that ledge there? Why did you put that ledge there? If I need to throw myself off anyway, Why not just have it flat?
Yeah.
Don't tease me, just let me die.
Just let me die. But the thing is, it's not even just the rolling. I mean, like, you use your tongue to take certain things in, like butterflies or the plant things that give you shots. And it's quite imprecise and quite difficult to do. And like with firing, isn't that easy to do, to get precise shots? And it feels like it should be a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's down to the camera.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the camera. I mean, there's ways around that. I mean, like with Banjo-Kazooie, or Banjo-Tooie rather, you had like different coloured eggs. And you could go into first-person mode during certain sections where you'd need to shoot things. So like, there's a bit in the ice level where you have to shoot specific targets, and you have a very specific time. Going into first-person mode and doing that kind of thing and changing your controls like a first-person shooter, so you've got accurate aiming, that would work. And it feels like the controls just aren't good enough for precise shooting, or even precise anything.
Well, it really sucks too, especially, like you're saying, going to the first person, because when you go to your aim mode to shoot your ice balls or whatever,
that's just an idea. Yeah.
It does kick you way off to the side and sort of an kind of over-the-shoulder third person, but they don't even give you a reticle of any sort to know where the hell you're pointing.
So it just kind of feels random, and it feels like it's overly difficult for the sake of it. They don't, like, try and do anything to help you. It's not like, okay, these controls aren't quite working, let's try and do something to make things easier for the player and to make it functional. They just kind of think, fuck it, I'll do. And I think that's a common theme for the game. Whether it's the level design, whether it's the controls, the bosses, the enemies, the camera, it just feels like...
That'll do.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that'll do. It's like a poor imitation of stuff they've done previously. I don't think any of it was intentional. I think it was just, they thought, because these genres don't exist anymore, there's no point making things like tip-top because there's no competition. People are still going to love it. And then, we got Mario Odyssey and Hat in Time, which kind of showed what they should have done instead. And I think that, to be honest, I wouldn't be against a Ukulele 2. I just think they need to up their game.
Ukulele?
Ukulele. I just kind of think they need to learn from the games that have come out since, like Mario Odyssey, and just up their game and make it good. I think the whole kind of premise, like, especially, as you say, like with the writing's decent. The characters, I think, are decent. And they can take that and the world and make it into something good.
Also, I do have to say, it's a beautiful looking game.
Oh, yes. No, it looks fantastic. Everything is really clean and bright.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's the final level, you're in a galaxy, and there are all these, like, planetoids and stuff like that going on, and it looks fantastic.
I think the thing that got this game all that Kickstarter money is also the thing that works against it the most, is the fact that it is previous Rare folks. It's people that have done this kind of thing before, and they did it worse than their first go at it.
Which it basically is like Mighty Number 9.
Yeah.
But not as bad. I would say not as bad.
Not as painful as Mighty Number 9.
Mighty Number 9 was a terrible game. I don't think this is a terrible game. I just think it's a game that didn't quite do as well as it should have done. I think it's an underperforming game. Not in terms of sales, but in terms of development, in terms of how it was made. I think that it should have been better and could have been better. It just wasn't. And I think it's disappointing.
I'm quite happy calling it a terrible game.
Well, the one thing that you can't really call terrible, again, because it was all Rare employees or ex-Rare employees, I felt the music was fantastic. But again, almost to a fault.
Yeah, I mean, it's very kind of Banjo-Kazooie-ish.
If you take Tribal Stack Towers or Tribal Stack Tropics, you take that music, you could have stuck it in any Banjo-Kazooie game and no one would have batted an eye.
You know what? When they did the Kickstarter, they released the Tribal Stack Tropics. Jesus, why is that so difficult to say? They released that music as a sample because that was from Grand Kirkhope. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's actually in one of the Banjo-Kazooie games. it feels like a remix from one of the levels, just because it sounds so similar. And it's sort of to a fault. I mean, it's good music. It just means that the game lacks its own identity. It kind of makes it feel more like a Banjo-Kazooie ripoff rather than its own thing. And I think it needs to carve its own identity. And I think it needs to distance itself from Banjo-Kazooie. You know, you can have you can have that spiritual successor type thing. You can include like a lot of elements that are throwbacks. But I also think if it wants to be its own IP, it really needs to do its own thing. And I think the music doesn't help.
This game has the Jurassic World problem. It's let's remind them of the thing that was good and popular, but not actually be that good and popular.
Yeah.
That's actually super fair.
Which is the video game industry in general. I mean, look at all the Fortnite clones. Look at all the Call of Duty clones that we used to have. And this is the same, apart from not with a popular genre. It's just going on nostalgia from Banjo-Kazooie, thinking, let's just try and copy this, but not be as good as it, or do our own thing.
Oh, I get it. Capital B, because it's a B.
Bees!
I get it now. That just clicked for me.
Are you dead serious?
Yeah.
So you didn't realise
B.
it's called capital B because it's a B.
Yeah, I didn't realise. I just noticed that.
Did you know that Dr. Quack, or whatever his name is called Dr. Quack because he's a duck, and ducks
Well,
go
yeah,
quack?
that was very on the nose.
I mean, I would say that's actually in capital B.
And people call doctors quacks, so
yeah,
they had a lot of fun with the writing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I think the writing was kind of fine, and what was the other lass? Was it Dr. Puzz or something? Yeah, Dr. Puzz, I think it was the girl who transforms you into things.
Yeah.
What did you think of the transformations?
I thought they were good and goofy.
I kind of thought the first one was a bit pointless, but it looked goofy enough, so I think it was fine as a first transformation. The second was a good idea, but controlled like shit.
I think my favorite was in the casino.
Yeah, that was good. The plane. I mean, they didn't really do much with it. I kind of like the pirate ship on the final level as well. That was cool.
Honestly, I couldn't be asked to unlock any of the transformations.
Yeah, to be honest, the transformations were disappointing because they didn't really do much with it. You kind of used it for 1 or 2 pages, and that was about it. They weren't really incorporated into like the whole world like they were with Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, where it kind of felt like you were doing it to open bits of the level, and it kind of felt like it was more part of the world, and it kind of felt a bit more necessary. You can literally go the whole game without doing any of the transformations because they're not necessary. You need them for like 1 or 2 pages per world, and that's it.
But that's it.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like they weren't really utilised properly. So again, another pay limitation.
Can I just say as well, whoever actually wrote down the word pages and thought that was okay needs to be shot. That is just sickening. Pages. God.
Yeah, I kind of thought the whole thing with pages and quills and the tomes and stuff.
Quills is fine.
I don't feel like it worked as a concept.
It didn't work as a game.
Well, yeah. I didn't think it really gelled into the world properly. It just kind of felt like it was just something that came off the top of the head and it just kind of got stuck there. I mean, like, you got musical notes and you've got jigsaw pieces, which aren't necessarily linked, but they fit within the world. They feel like they fit in the Banjo universe. Whereas this, it just feels like they're sort of there. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. I just kind of felt like that whole concept was just a bit like, okay. The only thing that I think redeems it is there was a joke at one point where I think Laylee was like, oh yeah, why don't you just get through the cage? You're thin enough. And it tries to go face first into the bars. And like, no, I can't get through. It's like, no, try going sideways. And then it goes sideways and just comes out of the cage. And that was a really good joke. And I think that's the only thing that utilises the whole pagey concept well, was that one joke.
I want to say that I just realized this too. We're kind of going back a little bit. One of the things that kind of made the worlds feel potentially a little too big is in Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, and DK64, and all in your classic rare collectathons, is you have items to pick up that don't go towards your goal. You have eggs and feathers, or crystal coconuts and music notes. So you have basically to recharge your abilities, and you just have an energy bar here. And while not having to go and pick up essentially what is ammo constantly, or else you're screwed. Like if you don't have enough feathers, if you just run out of feathers, it'll recharge up to like 10. But that's some of those areas in Banjo-Kazooie where you have to fly around for a long time. That's not enough. The result for Yooka-Laylee is that world feels emptier.
Yeah.
Because you don't have these little bouncing sprites all over the place to kind of help, again, to sort of help guide you where you need to go.
Yeah, definitely. Oh shit, and one more thing as well. Those fucking quizzes. Oh my god. One of my favourite things in Banjo-Kazooie was the quiz. Because you've got like the little board game where you've got some mini games, you've got some questions, you've got some where's this music from, where's this screenshot from. And it's a really well done quiz that's quite varied and, always really fun to play. In Banjo-Tooie, the quiz isn't as good, but it's incorporated as part of a boss fight. So it kind of keeps you on your toes, it throws you some quick fire questions, like during the heat of battle. So again, it's quite enjoyable, but not as good as is it Furnace of Fun? Or Grunty's Furnace Fun or something from the first game? Don't remember the name. Well, either way, that one's like the tip top. But then the quizzes in this game
are annoying.
You've got a path, and you progress slowly one square at a time, answering like a series of quite annoying questions, and it's like, fucking hell.
He will ask you questions about areas you haven't been to yet.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, because these quizzes in Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie at the end of the game, these are places that you'll definitely have been to. You might not notice something, but that's your fault, because you've definitely been to these places. So if you've not been observant, fair enough. The only parts to the Grunty quiz that were annoying were when you had to speak to a sister to find out specific information. That was the only thing you could potentially miss and not do. But like in these, the questions just kind of feel like annoying. And they're all the time. Whenever you go to a new section, I think there's like 3 or 4 quizzes in the game. And it's like, fucking hell. None of them are fun.
Now, going to new sections, I would like to add something. I will say the one thing that I feel Yooka-Laylee did much better than Banjo-Kazooie, like not just by a little bit, like a lot better, was the hub world.
Oh, I completely disagree. But go on.
I absolutely despise Grunty's lair in Banjo-Kazooie. It is not easy to find what you need. Your puzzles, the puzzles that you need to fill out to find or to open up worlds can be in completely different locations. You can just wander around forever and get lost because it's a maze, and it's intentionally a maze, but it's not a fun maze. And I know you.
There's layer easier to navigate than this factory. Like someplace, I just kind of think, how do I get back to this area? Like especially like in the later stages, I felt like, is it down this pathway? Is it not? I mean, later they started adding. With the patch, they added signs and stuff like that to direct you to specific places. But pre-patch, didn't have any clues about where to go. There was no sign saying, this way to this level.
Really?
It was just like you had to figure it out for yourself.
That would be super annoying.
Yeah.
I did not play pre-patch.
Yeah, post-patch, I mean, it's not too bad. But pre-patch was just annoying. And even post-patch, even though the navigation isn't so bad, I don't find it to be a great area. It's not a place that I want to explore. Whereas with Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, I feel like I do want to explore these hub worlds.
In Banjo-Kazooie, I just got angry all the time. Now, I didn't,
but then maybe it's because I played it a lot as a child, so I I do kind of know my way around it so much, but I never really found that.
I do I do not think it stands up to DK64's Hub World. That one is hands down the best. It feels, in its own right, it feels like a large world. There's stuff hidden all over it for all of the Kongs.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It feels like a level in its own right.
For Ukulele, personally, I had to print out a map, and I had to use a walkthrough in order to get to the next area that I needed to be, because I had no idea what I was doing, especially that underwater one, where you've got to go underwater and do this puzzle or something. I don't quite remember, I've blocked it from my memory. But it was something that I needed to look up a walkthrough for, and even with the walkthrough, it took me a fair bit of time.
I think I know what area you're talking about.
It's got like a piston in the middle, and a lot of floating platforms.
Yeah, because you have to go underwater and walk like underneath a grate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the game, when I first played it on the PC, that was pre-patch. And honestly, I had a good time. It had flaws. I didn't think any of the levels, apart from the last one and, bits of the other ones, were great. I enjoyed some of it. But overall, I had a decent enough experience. But when I replayed it for the podcast on the Switch, which was actually post-patch, I didn't have a great time with it. I still thought it was okay. I still thought it was a solid game. But I definitely saw a lot more problems with it, and there's definitely a lot wrong. Especially because the second time I played it, that was after I played Hat in Time and Odyssey, and obviously the first time was before, when I hadn't played any other 90s platformer. Well, when I haven't played any other modern 90s platformer. I guess you guys all hated it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, I could not deal with this game.
It was my pick, but I enjoyed it much more than I anticipated because I had heard a lot about it, and maybe people shat on it a bit more than it deserved before I had played it. But I'm not going to go, oh, this game is absolutely amazing, but I think it is a solid enough. It is a good enough game. But I do side with you just kind of overall in that the fact that something like Super Mario Odyssey came out pretty soon afterward really was like, and this is how this is supposed to be done.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest problem with it. Doesn't make it right. I mean, it still had a lot of problems that shouldn't have been there because the fact is it copied Banjo-Kazooie and whatnot and just wasn't anywhere near as good as the stuff it copied. But I think that then getting other modern collectathon platformers show it up, I think that definitely didn't help, especially when it came to replaying it for me. I still don't think it's necessarily a terrible game. I wouldn't class it as a bad game. I think good enough, as you say, is probably a fair enough description of it.
And that is my general, and that's my consensus in the end, is that the problem with this game is that it didn't correct what the crew at Playtonic had 20 years to sit down and think about and correct.
They should know better.
They should have known better. And there's no excuse for that. So whereas you might take Banjo-Kazooie and go, this was a bad design choice, you lose a point. That same exact bad design in this game is now worth 3 points, which doesn't seem fair, but this is not new ground.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, back then, it was new.
Yeah, and it was new.
So
you had hardware limitations too.
Yeah, but you don't have hardware limitations. Other people, at the very least, have fixed the problems and found workarounds which you can just copy.
Yeah, and Playtonic didn't bother.
Yeah, I mean, good enough is probably a very generous description of the game, but yeah, I think that's probably the best description it can get.
Get it on sale.
Or don't.
I think if you're a big fan of collectathon platformers, I'd agree with Ryan. If you're a huge fan of the genre, get it on sale because it's sufficiently enjoyable for a big fan of that kind of genre. If you're a big fan and want something to play, but don't expect it to be fantastic. There are definitely better ones out there now.
I'm gonna go back and play this some more and see the rest of the game. but it just, it is not on par with what this team has done before, and that's the biggest problem with it.
The last thing I'll say about this game is picture your favorite level in Yooka-Laylee. Now picture it next to New Donk City.
I mean, that's just not fair to games in general.
That's mean. I could pick a lot of favorite levels and then stick it against New Donk City. And
yeah, I say again, that's another unfortunate thing, because had Mario Odyssey never come out, it wouldn't have suffered from that comparison. And I think that, now it's been out, now that other games have come out, they've really got to up their game for Yooka-Laylee or Tooka-Laylee. So I think that I'll probably judge them a lot more harshly next time, because I expect a lot better. And making that comparison, I think, now to Yooka-Laylee is a little bit unfair.
Well, and shit, even if you pick your favorite level from Yooka-Laylee,
compare it to Yooka-Laylee.
Well, I'll say take your favorite level from Yooka-Laylee and then pick it and then stack it against something like Bowser World, which is super linear, or Bowser Kingdom, I guess it would be, from Odyssey, and it's just slaughters it in design all over the place. And that level's Bowser Kingdom is supposed to be super hard, and it's a gauntlet. The whole world is supposed to function as a gauntlet, and it's just still that much better.
Yeah, to be fair, you could pick any random world, apart from the one that's a tiny one with a dragon and the tiny cloud one. If you pick any proper world, it's probably going to shit over any Yooka-Laylee world. But as I say, that game came after, so I think it's kind of unfortunate to compare it. But in a post-Mario Odyssey world, they need to do better next time.
Yeah, okay, well, I think we've all said as much as we're going to say about Yooka-Laylee, and I think we all know our thoughts on that one. I think it's time to move on to the last game, which is Steven's pick.
At the third stroke, it will be
Radical.
o'clock precisely.
Odyssey Xtreme 2019 podcast.
My pick for this month was Doom 2016. I'm sure most of you have already played this game, but for those of you that haven't, it's basically, they were making a Doom 4, and it was looking to be your bog standard garbage first-person shooter from, the modern day. And at some point, they decided to not do that and make it make it similar to the original Doom. And they absolutely succeeded in capturing the feel of the original Doom. Now, full disclosure on this, I had not played Doom when I picked this game up. This was my first experience with Doom. So, in that regard, it is incredible as an introduction, because you get, some of the modern conveniences of first-person shooters, but also that Doom feel. So it worked really well for me, as a first introduction to the series. I know you guys have opinions on this.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing Doom. It was like my favorite game as a kid. And I was always disappointed by Doom 3, because as much as I like horror stuff, it kind of took away a lot of the action. It was an action game, but it took away some of that relentless, constant action that you had. Doom 1 and 2 always keep you on your toes. Final Doom as well. And Doom 3, it goes for a more atmospheric kind of feel. Yeah. And it gets to the point where it's like, oh, there's a dark corner coming up. There will be an imp at the end of that dark corner when I turn around. And it gets predictable because it uses kind of certain horror tropes, and it overuses them quite a lot. So you kind of know what's coming, and it gets a little bit dull. Whereas in the original Dooms, there was just this variety of enemies that were just relentless, and that was really recaptured really, really well in Doom 2016.
I would say that with Doom 3, you're right, although I would also say that the second half of it does kind of get a little bit better, because that's when you start getting more ammunition, more weapons, and more monsters start coming. and it starts to sort of feel a bit more old school, but not anywhere near as like Doom 2016 does. But
Well,
it's
and I
just
did
better than the first half of the game, where it's really slow and atmospheric, and as you say, a little bit dull, to be honest.
I'll be completely honest with you. I've never got to the second half of Doom 3 because the first half always bored me to tears.
It does get better.
I didn't realize we were going to be shitting on Doom 3 today, but like the flashlight in Doom 3 is awful. It's an absolute dumpster fire of a flashlight.
I would say it's a fantastic idea, but done terribly.
And
I
also
think the idea of switching between your gun and the flashlight is excellent for a horror game. But
like you said, it gets predictable where you go, there's a dark corner and a monster's going to jump out of it. But the fact that you could, like, when you turn around specifically, but the fact that you can walk up, examine a corner that's dark, and then step away and turn around, start walking away, and a monster jumps out of it is annoying because it just makes it a scripted spawn point.
One thing to mention as well with the flashlight, in the BFG edition, they actually reconfigured it so that your flashlight was mounted onto your gun, or could be mounted onto your gun.
Yeah, and I kind of think that was missing the point. I liked it better when it was separate, because it was such a great idea for a horror game. The main problem is that the flashlight's garbage and doesn't light anything up.
That's par for the course with flashlights in horror games. People who make horror games don't know how flashlights work.
Yep.
They're actually quite good at illuminating spaces and not just like a little single circle in the middle.
Well,
Especially a military flashlight. You'd expect that to work a little bit more efficiently.
I mean, you gotta imagine if flashlights were that bad, they wouldn't still be around.
Yeah, right. But we're not here to shit on Doom 3. Although I could dedicate an episode to just shitting on Doom 3.
I mean, we could really do that.
But let's get back to the good game, which is Doom 2016, which I played in 2017 and was the best game of 2017 for me.
Likewise. My one gripe is the fact that they just called it Doom, so we have to keep saying Doom 2016.
Yeah, right. At least the sequel coming up is, Doom Eternal, so it's not Doom 2 or Doom also.
The other problem with Doom 2016 is that it released on the Switch, last year?
Yeah.
For me, it's Doom 2018, because that's the first time I ever played it.
Oh, you played the Switch edition, so how'd that pan out for you?
Good. I mean, it probably doesn't run like as fast or as beautifully as like the PC or something, but it's really smooth, 30 frames per second at least, and it looks really nice.
From what I understand, it's serviceable on Switch. Obviously not as good as PS4 or Xbox One, but it wasn't going to be.
Yeah, but then on the flip side, you've got it portably as well.
Exactly.
I mean, I played it on the TV for a while, and then I just started playing it in handheld, to be honest. And I just found lying on the couch, just,
mowing down.
The tablet is pretty great.
Just mowing down monsters, why not?
Yeah. The only issue with the Switch version is that some of the bonus stages were a little buggy. Like you'd fall through the map, like completely fall through it in certain places. And I don't know if that happens with the PS4 and PC versions.
I have not come across that.
No, I didn't come across that on PC.
I think it happened to me 2 or 3 times whilst I was playing them. But I played it, but that was during the actual main campaign, and also replaying them in the game menu, because you could replay them there. Well, we might as well get out of the way rather than just calling them the bonus levels. So I take it you discovered at least one of the bonus stages. They're like mini rooms, which were levels from the original 2 games.
Those were especially cool for me to find, having not played them. I was like, oh, sweet.
You find like a random room, but then in the main menu, you can actually replay the entire stage, but using Doom 2016 guns.
I thought you were talking about the Stone Rune challenges for a second. Something else. You're talking about the
Doom 1 levels.
The Doom 1 and 2 levels, yeah. I found that the Doom levels, like the retro Doom levels that you could unlock, while it was super, super cool, they were harder than they were in original Doom, just because, let's be honest, some of these, like the Pinkies, they're harder than they are in classic Doom. They take a lot more damage.
Yeah.
Plus, you need to be a lot more accurate with your shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you actually have to aim upwards.
Yeah, they were hard. Like, it was really cool to run around and complete those levels, but it was hard.
Yeah. Still, they were my favourite part of the game.
I do want to bring up the rune challenges that got you, like, upgrades to your armor and stuff when you beat them. It felt like it brought back some of the hecticness. Not to say that Doom 2016 isn't hectic at all, but it really brought back kind of the, oh no, I'm in a room full of monsters now, and it felt like a baby Doom level, but brand new.
Yeah.
Like a lot of, like, the little battle arenas you come in where, like, you have to kill enemies so fast and it adds, a second or two to your timer. But you have to kill 20 enemies in, like, when you start with, like, 10 seconds.
Yeah, they were quite interesting. Like, some of them, as you say, you got to kill a certain amount of enemies. There's one where you got to destroy 30 barrels with a pistol or something.
Mm-hmm.
One where you got to kill enemies, but using, like, exploding barrels and not shoot them directly.
There was one of them, I believe, where you can't move. You can only move for, like, a second or two after you kill an enemy.
Yeah.
So, like, it becomes they go for, like, this hectic shooter to also a little bit of a puzzle, and it just felt really good. It felt really good and over the top.
I did find some of them to be quite stressful.
I did as well, yeah.
Oh, yes.
But they were still enjoyable.
And they are definitely worth doing as well because they do unlock upgrades for your main campaign.
Yeah.
Some of them are broken, just flat out broken upgrades. One of them is there's a setup you can build with those runes where it's like you need to kill a certain amount of enemies with the minigun, and then the minigun won't overheat. Like, you have to kill so many enemies back to back. And then basically the masterwork option for the minigun pops up, and the minigun will never overheat. But then there's two more rune abilities that you unlock. One of them is when you do executions on enemies, they drop armor. And then there's another one where if your armor is above, like, 75% maximum capacity, you have infinite ammo.
Oh,
so
yeah, that is pretty broken.
Yeah, you upgrade your minigun, you get your tri-barrel with no overheat, and then you just stock up on armor and enter a room and just go to town. And it's pretty broken, but fun. The more crazy it gets, the more Doom it feels, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, that's one of the greatest things about it is just the more into it you get, the more you're like, this is Doom.
It's about killing hordes and hordes of monsters from hell, so the easier that gets, the more Doom.
It's so funny to see, like, in the early game, you've got this robot talking story at you, and the protagonist just, the Doom Marine does not want any of it. All he wants to do is kill demons.
Well, yeah, and it's actually fun because apparently this game had a lot of really bizarre confusion around it. Was it a reboot of Doom? Was it a brand new Doom story? Was it Doom 4? And the answer is kind of yes, but there are big stone runes that you can activate that don't bring you to challenges when you're in hell, and it talks about the Doom Slayer, which is you, Doom Guy. While the game doesn't outright say you are the original Doom Marine, it heavily implies that you are the original Doom Marine.
Like, you were locked up in a vault that was found in hell.
And you've been in hell for, like, 1,000 years just killing stuff. And hell is terrified of you.
And there's all kind of tidbits in the optional story that you can read that reference the older games and, really tie everything together.
Yeah, one of the things that actually works in the game's favour, there isn't exposition too much throughout the story, but the exposition is there in the menus if you want it to be. All the kind of like encyclopedia entries when you kill a monster, when you visit certain areas, there is a lot of backstory there. But it's something that you actually have to go and find in the menus. It's not given to you in the game, which for some games would be to its detriment. But for a game like Doom, which is all about going into a group of enemies and just blasting them to shit, it really is a good choice that they put that behind the menus and that. And yeah, it does give you some of that history towards the backstory of the Doom guy and his kind of like legend in hell.
speaking of the story, I just say it's good that they put all that as extra stuff, but it's also quite good how in the main game, the game knows that there's not much plot to it, and the Doom Marine or Doom Exterminator or whatever it's called, Doom Slayer, doesn't give a shit about it either. Like right at the start of the game, you get like some plot exposition on like a monitor, and the Doom Slayer just rips it out and throws it on the floor.
Yeah,
just
that's what.
Doesn't give a shit about it.
That's what Steven was saying. That he was talking about the just in a way like, nope, I have stuff to do.
Yeah, and I think there's one later on with what's his name? Was it Samuel or something?
Samuel Hayden.
Samuel Hayden.
Yeah. There's like a conversation with him where he's going to like plot exposition, and the Doom guy just doesn't give a shit. And he's like, yeah, whatever.
When you've got to disable all these energy core things.
Yeah, and he just rips it out.
Yeah, it says, please be careful. And then Doom Guy just actually kicks it.
Yeah. The last one, he's like, please don't destroy this one. You could cause untold destruction. You just kicks it until it breaks.
I really hope Doom Eternal's the same.
I mean, I can't imagine it wouldn't be
now you have a grappling hook. Like, you have a grappling hook on the shotgun, it looks like, from what I saw from the gameplay footage that they released last year. Like, how is that not going to make it better? It's just going to get even more silly and over the top. And what I wanted to say concerning, because they're mentioning gameplay, the one thing that really made Doom feel like Doom is you cannot run because you always run. And so many games have so many modern FPSs. Yeah, you click left stick or right stick or whatever it may be, and you can sprint.
Yeah, you got your sprint mechanic.
You have a sprint mechanic, but Doom Guy just always sprints unless he finds a red ball, in which case he sprints even faster. They just did everything right, where you have sprinklings of armor and health around, and well, actually, I don't think you have sprinklings of health around, just armor. You have to kill to get health.
Yeah,
I think you end up having to do those.
You have to do the exit
in order to get health.
Well, there are some health tanks laying around, but most of your health comes from the glory kills.
Yeah.
And then
there we go, glory kills.
And then the nice thing of use the chainsaw and they explode into ammo, because you're going to use the chainsaw when you're out of ammo.
It's a very, very well designed set of mechanics that flows smoothly. You never feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make this. Like, even if you do shoot yourself into a corner and you're out of ammo and you have no chainsaw bullets, gas, so it's gas for the chainsaw.
Chainsaws don't have bullets.
I bet there's a game somewhere that disagrees with that.
Gears of I think.
Yeah, I guess, those chainsaws shoot bullets.
Regardless, you can still punch your way out of that.
Yeah, but if you shoot yourself into a corner, run out of ammo, and you can't use the chainsaw, as long as you aren't going against something like, I don't know, like a Baron of Hell, you can probably run around and punch something until you can stun them, get a glory kill, get ammo, health, what you need, and then continue on.
Yeah.
Like, you're never completely screwed.
Although, honestly, I never found myself in a position where I would need to do that. I always found that the game did give you kind of like plenty of ammunition, and it gives you more than you need, generally. You sometimes have to kind of like traverse the level a little bit to find some of it, but it's generally always there, and there's generally an abundance of it.
It depends on what difficulty you're playing.
Yeah.
On the harder difficulty levels, it's quite stingy with it. Well, I say quite stingy. You take a lot of damage, and the amount you get in return doesn't really make up for it.
Speaking of damage, Doom 2016 did something really, really cool with the health. And I wouldn't be surprised if you knew about this, Steven, but the game made itself easier than it let on. On your last, 10 or 15% of the health of your health bar, you actually took noticeably less damage from the same exact attacks.
Yeah, most games do that.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, no, and it's because it's so hectic when you chew through a whole bunch of health and you get down to that last bit and you start basically panicking in game and running around and trying to get your health and get kills to get your health back up. It was forgiving, but it still made you feel like a badass. You'd be sitting there at 10 HP, and pull out a clutch kill. And really, like, another hit normally would have taken 10 off, but now maybe it only brought you down to 2 while you were going for your execution.
Right.
And it was there to make you survive, so you could continue. That way the game felt hard, but it wasn't constantly broken by dying. Now, harder mode, I think, with a harder difficulty, sort of got rid of that. But as far as like normal and easy mode go, yeah, they make the game flow better that way, and that's another brilliant mechanic to be introduced and made sure it's in place. Because it's really rough, because if you die once in a game, it's fine. You die twice, you're like, okay, I'm going to get this. When you died 15, 20 times, and it's not hard mode, and you're not necessarily doing anything particularly super wrong...
Yeah, that can definitely be discouraging.
It just starts wearing on the game.
Yeah, like, hello, final boss.
Yeah, but like, yes, no, oh my god. But if you're constantly going through and just barely scraping by... you feel really good.
We've talked a lot about like the mechanics of the game, but we haven't really gone into like the core gameplay. Shall we talk about that? It's the way that it makes it feel like the originals is that you basically just have a whole slew of enemies just all over the place, and you're generally moving through the environment. You'll have 1 or 2 enemies that you got to deal with, and you know, it kind of like feels like the original in that way. But there are certain places, like several times throughout the level, where the doors will kind of like lock behind you, and you will be essentially inside an arena with a whole bunch of enemies all attacking you at once, and you kind of like have to use the environment and the weapons to your advantage. And the way that it plays is kind of like fast, it's seamless, as you've said previously, it makes you feel like a badass because you're just going from kill to kill to kill, switching weapons, jumping around the environment, dodging stuff. It just has this fantastic feel to it. This fantastic
definitely.
Flow to it.
And it keeps the same exact progression requirements of the classic Doom, where you need to go here, door is locked, find the key card, kill a bunch of enemies to get the key card, open door, find next key card. And not even necessarily in a linear way. Some of those maps you're crossing back and forth like 3-4 times just to get the stuff you need to find the exit of the level. And that's very much like a lot of missions in Classic Doom where you're running back and forth.
It does borrow a lot of the gameplay elements from the original and just transplants them into kind of like a modern engine.
It works really well. Like, it's just really, really well done.
And one thing that perfectly complements it as well is the music.
Yes.
The music was done by Mick Gordon, and when he was first hired by id Software, he was given one directive: no metal. So he was like, fuck that, and made the entire thing metal. I think he kind of like felt that he could make something with metal that would like really fit the game, so he did a couple tracks, sent them to id Software and said, I know you said definitely no metal, but check this out. They were immediately on board once he kind of like sent these tracks in. It just feels like it fits so well with the game, and I can't imagine it not having like a guitar-based soundtrack now.
Yeah, I cannot fathom this game without the metal.
Well, and it doesn't make sense either, especially considering Doom, all those riffs were based off of like classic like heavy rock and metal songs. How many Metallica riffs basically Metallica riffs are in the original Doom? There's like 3 of them that run for level music. Like, the soundtrack of Doom is metal.
Yeah.
And what's more heavy metal than running around and murdering demons? I mean, ask Jack Black, he'll tell you. It's killing demons.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he kind of like went against their original directive and just said, you know what, I'm the composer for this game, this is what I think you want, and they gave him the thumbs up.
Yeah, no, I'm super glad for it. And the way that the game introduces how the soundtrack's going to go, because when it starts up, there's not a whole lot going on, but then when it really kicks into the title after that first level, it drops into that really heavy metal, and it just immediately sets the tone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop.
Yeah, I mean, it has its quieter moments, but once you get into the fighting, the music's kind of dynamic in that it will match what you're doing. If you get into a major firefight, it'll bring itself up and get more frantic and upbeat.
Yeah, definitely. And then it'll scale back a little bit once you're, out of the fight and just running around.
It was amazing. It really hit the spot.
And I mentioned about id Software giving it the thumbs up, which reminded me, did any of you fall into lava at any point?
I, too, have seen Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, the game is full of pop culture references, but if you happen to fall into the lava in the game, the Doom guy sinks down, and the camera focuses on his hand as he's going down. That's the only thing still sticking out of the lava. And it just does the thumbs up from the end of Terminator 2, which I thought was quite a nice touch.
There's other things to give character to the Doom Marine, like the one, secret little figure that he finds that he didn't fist bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's only because there's a whole bunch of Doom Guy bobbleheads, but there's only one that is in green.
Yeah.
And I think it's the first level I think it's on the first level that the green one's on. It might be the second. But that's the only one he fist bumps. It's not the first one you find. It's just the green one.
Yeah.
He just, hands up, bump, and then he does the wiggly fingers away.
I thought he fist bumped all of them.
No, he only
No,
fist
just the
bumps
one.
one.
Huh.
He looks at all of them, but he only fist bumps the green one.
Ah, fair enough.
Which means that Doom Guy is intelligent. He can recognize himself. He has self-awareness.
Or he's not colorblind.
Well, that too. There was something else I wanted to bring up about this. Did anybody give the multiplayer a shot?
Nope.
I did. Before the game came out, they had a free multiplayer beta test, which you could sign up for. So I signed up for that and spent a little bit of time. Did actually a couple of videos on my YouTube channel of my first impressions of that. And it's basically, it is like a first-person shooter deathmatch thing. There's nothing particularly special about it. Obviously, you're using the Doom weapons. You can change in some of the Doom demons and stuff like that. But honestly, there is nothing really that sets it apart. And I found myself a little bit disappointed by the multiplayer. There is fun to be had there, but in terms of multiplayer deathmatch shooters, there are much better out there, and it is somewhat generic.
What I got from it, I particularly enjoyed the multiplayer, but it sort of took me back to the Halo 3 era, because there's no run, so you're just always moving at a pretty good clip. You're moving faster than in Halo 3, but it's just you have guns, you point and shoot, and you just run down the next corridor. I don't think it captured the spirit of classic Doom multiplayer super well, and that's why a lot of people were wieners about Doom and just bombing it before it even came out because they played the multiplayer beta. But I felt it captured the classic FPS multiplayer format well enough.
Yeah, but I think well enough is probably the best you can say about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and praise it. Honestly, what I would rather them do, because Quake is coming out this year, I think.
Quake Legends.
Yeah.
Is it out of beta?
I want to say it's coming out at the end of this year. It might be summer, but they've been talking about it for a while. But this new Quake is going to be nothing but multiplayer. That's all it is.
That's a shame. I want another Quake single-player game.
Yeah, they haven't stated any single sort of campaign in it. It's just going to be single-player. And with that being said, I hope Doom Eternal lacks competitive multiplayer.
Yeah, I'm not going to play it anyway, so...
Yeah, because the multiplayer, while it was decent, it wasn't special enough, like Matt said. It didn't really stand out, and well enough is indeed probably the best you can describe it as.
Well, and that's not what we should be there for. It's Doom.
Exactly. Well, because Doom had a huge multiplayer, LAN multiplayer, back in the day. It was massive, and people wanted to recapture that.
Yeah, but you can't.
But you can't, and if you really, really want that experience, you can still do Doom LAN parties. There are some things that you can't revive.
Yeah, it felt like it was there because it had to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, well, because every game has to have competitive multiplayer now.
It wasn't even done by the same studio.
Yeah, I would, however, in Doom Eternal, prefer if they brought in a co-op campaign. Because you could co-op in Doom 2.
Yeah, that would be an interesting way to play it.
The way the industry's going on, at this point, I think we'll be lucky if it's not a live service.
Right. So I would love to see that. Did anybody ever take a whack at the map maker? I don't even know if you had that on the Switch, Adam.
No, the Switch version doesn't have the map maker.
So yeah, there's a third mode, I'm calling it the Forge. Halo is Forge, but basically it's Forge mode. You can make your own maps, but beyond that, you can make your own campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great idea. I just don't have the creativity for it.
It's super intricate, and I gave up on it because there's so much going on. But Doom basically has semi-infinite replay value because there is a huge community-created content.
Yeah.
Where you can download people's maps and stuff that they've made. And some of them are just horde modes. Other of them are like actual thought-out campaign levels with like goals you have to establish and complete to move on. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, like, I could be down for that. It's just I don't have the creativity to create it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not gone into Map Maker itself, but I have played community maps.
It's pretty amazing. And that's honestly because Doom got modded to hell.
Yeah.
So that was a really good nod from id to just include a mode that allowed anybody to do that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in terms of the additional modes, while I said that multiplayer kind of feels tacked on, the map maker is something that I feel really did kind of need to be there for a kind of like community perspective. It was important that people were able to make their own Doom levels, and I think it was a good choice to add it in.
Oh, absolutely.
As a whole, in terms of the extra modes, there is a lot to enjoy there. Even if the multiplayer isn't great, you can still get some enjoyment out of it. And if you are feeling creative, you can go into the map editor and do all that kind of stuff. But it is mainly about the main game, and I think we can all agree that the main game is a really, really excellent experience.
Yeah, it's just fantastic.
Oh no, all the level progression was fine. What little story you got kind of fed to you just playing the game without picking up stuff and reading it felt really good. The Caco demons were good and high res and creepy looking. I like the variance in the execution kills.
Oh, yeah. And how some of the optional objectives encouraged you to find those variants rather than just doing the same one over and over again.
Yeah, because you'd get your, what were they, oh shoot, I can't remember what the points are called, that you get a dump in your suit. But yeah, every level would have, you need to get X kills with something, you need to do so many execution kills. You
yes.
Need to do, they'd have little side objectives to do in there, and you would get points to dump into your, I think it was your guns.
Yeah, and the glory kills, you could target, the head, the body, or any of those, and you would get a different kill.
And then if you got your Berserker Orb, everything was a glory kill.
Yeah.
I mean, we've not really talked too much about the weapons, actually. What was everyone's favorite weapon?
Oh, the super shotgun, hands down. Super shotgun.
Mine was the standard shotgun with the kind of like explosive shot on it.
Ah, okay.
The assault rifle was also really, really good once you got the little rocket attachment.
Yeah, it was, because you could charge up those little rockets while you were still firing, and then just let it off.
But there was one of like the masterwork on it, the masterwork for that piece, whatever you had to accomplish with it, it removed the charge time. It would just shoot rockets. And I don't remember which boss it was, the golems with the little worm in them.
The one where you fight two at once.
Yes, if you took the time to get the kills, to get the little rocket masterwork on that, you could obliterate those bosses with the rockets on the assault rifle, because it was just a constant stream.
There are absolutely certain weapons that work better against certain enemies, and it's kind of like learning that and switching on the fly that a lot of the flow of the combat really comes from.
Yeah.
You've got imps over there, right, explosive shot to them, you can take out three at once. Okay, there's a pink demon over there, quickly switch to your minigun, start firing it up, and then jump up there, rocket launcher, boom. It's once you kind of like get into the zone with that and know which weapons you need to use for which situations, it feels really, really good to actually play.
Was anybody else underwhelmed by the rocket launcher, by the way?
I mean, I didn't use it much, but
Yeah, I
I,
didn't use it, but it was fine.
I tried using it a few times. I got all like the unlocks for it, but really I was just sitting there going, this isn't that great.
it doesn't do as much damage as you would expect it to.
When all the other guns have so much impact, that one being a little bit lacking just stands out even more.
And I want to say that it was very useful against the Spider Mastermind in the end.
Okay.
Like, it just seemed to hit a lot harder than it normally did. Maybe it's just because it, shot decently fast and you've been hoarding ammo up to this point, so you have a lot of it and you're going to use all of it anyway.
Oh, the BFG in this was quite good as well. I think I liked the BFG in this more than the originals. I think it's got a really good effect to it. Did
anybody exploit the BFG? I don't know if it worked on the Switch version, because that's a later version.
What do you mean?
But there's a BFG exploit in Doom, and I don't know if it's been patched out. It's been a while since I've played it. But when you pull up your weapon wheel, time slows down around you. Uh-huh. So you can select, and you're not going to get mauled by something because you're trying to pick a gun. So while the weapon wheel is up, everything's going slower around you. The BFG, when you shoot the ball and immediately open up your weapon wheel after you take a shot, the BFG shot travels really slowly across the room, but it still does the same DPS in real time, in your real time. So while that shot will cross the room in a second and a half, now it takes it 5 seconds to get across the room, and it does 5 seconds worth of damage. Geez. So there are certain enemies that you can, they may survive a BFG, or you'll kill this enemy, and that spawns more enemies to come in.
Well, they survive a super BFG.
Yeah, basically you get extra BFG damage out of it, and there's a boss, I want to say it's the Cyber Demon. You can knock off, was it the Cyber Demon? No, because you fight him before, I think.
Yeah, you don't have the BFG when you fight the Cyber Demon.
You don't have the BFG, then which one is it? There's one boss where you can take off half his health with one shot from the BFG, if you angled it just right. Because it shoots the little zaps off the side, and it'll just lock onto him and keep traveling, and just drain his health.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Like the biggest fuckingest gun.
Yeah. And, I don't know if that worked in the Switch version, but you might give that a shot, Adam. Bullet humor.
I don't know if it works in the Switch one.
So I imagine they would have patched that out, or maybe it's just one of those mechanics that got stuck there, and by the time they found out about it and came up with a fix, they decided not to.
I don't know. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, no, that's totally a thing.
Speaking of the bosses then, which boss was your favourite? Mine was the Cyber Demon, because it's one of those ones where you have to learn the attack pattern and you've got to use jumping in it to avoid certain attacks, and I found that really enjoyable, the Cyber Demon one.
Yeah, I think the Cyber Demon was mine also, just because, I didn't have the nostalgia for some of this stuff like some other people, but I liked the Cyber Demon fight. I mean, it was all just really good. I don't know what else to say. It was just good.
I very much enjoyed the golems, if you will.
Yeah, that's probably the most frantic fight in the game.
And I really did just like how ridiculous it is. I kind of wish that the game, once you beat the game, you just got a boss rush mode, because there's 4 bosses in the game.
Yeah, I like the Cyber Demon one. I wasn't a massive fan of the design of the Spider Mastermind in Doom 2016. So, yeah, I prefer the Cyber Demon.
The Spider Mastermind was a pain in the arse for me. It took me a long, long time to finish it. I think I ended up at about 3 hours of attempts on that boss.
I don't know if it actually has any true weaknesses, or how to trigger anything, because there's always a weakness and there's always a method on all the bosses. You have to do a thing to open up the weak point, or this, that, and the other. And on the Spider Mastermind, I don't know if there's a trick, or if it's just you just have to stay alive and keep dumping bullets into it. Do you shoot its gun? Do you shoot its exposed brainy parts? I still don't know.
The exposed brain is generally where you want to be shooting. But it is kind of more of an endurance fight, because you're basically waiting for the BFG ammo to respawn and kind of do your major damage on it. But there's a lot of different mechanics you're having to dodge at once. Like I said, about 3 hours of attempts for me. It was an absolute pain in the ass.
Oof. That's funny that I would whine about the Spider Mastermind basically being just a bullet sponge when my favorite fights in the classic Metroid games, well, the 2D Metroid games, is Ridley because he's just a missile sponge. I don't know, it's just something more frustrating about the Spider Mastermind. Not to say it wasn't a good boss fight, it was a really good boss fight, it was just really hard.
For me, that one boss fight is probably the worst part of the game. And it's a shame because you want to kind of like go out on a high.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it didn't like diminish my enjoyment of the game as a whole. It's just, I wish that boss fight had have been a bit more creative.
Well, I guess it could have been the other way around. Has anyone here played Wolfenstein: The Old Blood?
Not all of it, but yes.
The boss fight is like exact opposite. It's one of the easiest fights in the game once you figure out exactly what you're doing. It doesn't take that long to do. And it's like, yeah, you're going out kicking ass as you've been mauling Nazis in this game. Then you go out and fight this big old boss, and you finish up, and you're like, I'm not satisfied at all. So I'd rather know that I beat something really, really hard, kind of like the Locust Queen in Gears 3, than just being able to walk up, sneeze on him, and he collapses.
Yeah, that's fair. So has anyone played the VR expansion, Doom VFR or whatever it's called?
No, I don't have a headset.
Me neither.
I didn't think any of us had VR headset, but I figured I'd ask.
No, we're not edgy enough.
Or rich enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're not wealthy enough.
I mean, unless it can be done using those green and red glasses, then I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, plus, I don't think anybody realistically has room for room scale VR.
Yeah, but it's there as an option if you do have the kit.
Yeah, I've not heard much about it, so I don't know how good it is, but, it's there. Personally, I'm just waiting for Doom Eternal because I'm hoping it's going to be just as fantastic as this one.
Yeah, it's certainly looking it from the trailers. I don't think we have a solid release date on that yet, though.
But I mean, I'm not super worried about it. I mean, we got plenty of games to keep us busy right now.
Oh, yeah.
Now, anyone got anything else to say about it?
I think we've praised it pretty much nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think our opinions are pretty well stated at this point. I mean, the only other thing I would add is that it, and I may have said this already, but it works great even if you don't have any experience with previous Doom games. Like, you can jump into this and be able to succeed without knowing how Doom used to work.
Oh, yeah. Because it uses a lot of the modern shooter mechanics quite well, just with kind of like a twist on them.
Yeah.
So, as long as you're familiar with shooter games as a whole, it's not really going to cause you too much issues.
And honestly, it's a lot more fun than most modern shooters.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Uh-huh.
Like, I mean, we just did that first-person shooter episode, and a lot of those games are a lot more fun than modern first-person shooters. Modern shooters are just kind of dull.
Blah.
Uh-huh.
It's like, this one's Call of Duty, but, in a different time period.
You realise now that we've talked about Doom for 3 episodes in a row.
Yeah, I was going to say
Because
something about that.
A lot of the marathon talk was about Doom as well.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? I think you would be hard-pressed to find, what do we got? 7, 8 more episodes this year? I don't know if we're going to find that many more excuses to talk about Doom.
I mean, we could do Doom 2. We could shit on Doom 3 for an episode. There is a Doom RPG.
That's amazing.
I mean, we have opportunities.
I think with some of the topics we have coming up, it's going to be kind of hard to spin off into Doom.
Nah, that's a challenge, man.
Well, we could always rebrand again to a Doom podcast.
Yeah, this is true.
How about we just rebrand every episode? Soon we'll be talking about, like, designer clothes games, which I guess would just be Barbie? That'd be a Barbie game just about designer clothes? I don't know.
No, it would be those ones on the DS. I don't remember what they're called.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, fashion designer, musician, like all those on the DS.
Oh, I think they're called Imagine, aren't they?
Yeah, Imagine, that's what they are. Yeah, we just be talking about those for like 3 weeks.
Okay, so I think if everyone's given their thoughts on Doom, it's probably time to move on to what we thought were our favourite picks this month. So we'll see you shortly.
Hello, my name's
Xtreme.
In your face, all over the place.
Odyssey Xtreme 2019 podcast. Okay, that was the 4 games for this episode of Odyssey Xtreme 2019. Let's talk about which games were our favourites. Okay, so I'll go first. My personal favourite probably won't come as too much of a surprise here, but it is Doom, because as you know, as we talked about, I am a massive fan of the original, and this game just kind of like brought that original feel into the modern times and just did a really, really good job with it. It's something that I really loved. There's a complete playthrough of it on my YouTube channel if you want to have a look there, and I enjoyed it a lot. So, Adam, what was your favourite?
Mine might come as a bit of a surprise, but it's Ukulele.
Really?
Really?
Big fan of 3D platformers, and having that come back to the modern era, that old genre that I used to love, was really something special.
Okay.
April Fools, you fucking idiots. It would Doom, of course.
All right.
Well played.
You had me worried there for a minute. Ryan, what is your favourite this month?
I was thinking for a minute that maybe it was Bloodstained because it did execute the Castlevania feel so well. It looked right. But it brought in the new mechanics with the whole switching out and stuff that made it just a little bit fresh, just enough fresh. But at the end of the day, it's still Doom. Doom 2016 was just
good.
It's as close to a perfect shooter as you're going to get.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, brilliant. And Stephen, what was your favourite?
Well, I'm not allowed to pick Doom, so when I went and looked at the games for this episode, I thought Pokemon was just going to run away with it. I was convinced that was, there was going to be no question there. I'm now torn between Pokemon and Bloodstained because Bloodstained was just really good. I think I do have to give the slight edge to Pokemon, though, just because it's, it does have a lot more nostalgia for me, and it was very, very well executed.
Good lad.
Yeah, cool. All good choices there, I think. Okay, so before we go, we do have a competition this month to win, God forbid, my copy of Ukulele for the PS4. This is absolutely mint. I've not had it for very long, and I don't want it anymore, to be honest.
It's not a mint game, but copies mint.
But it is something that you may get some enjoyment out of. So what you need to do to enter this competition is go on to our Facebook page. Just search Retro Odyssey Podcast. You'll find us there. And share the post that has this episode in it. There will be a post which links to this particular episode, and it'll mention the competition as well. Go to our page, share that post, and we will pick a winner in the next episode from the people that have shared. I don't quite know how we're going to pick the winner yet, but we'll come up with a way, some kind of random number generator or something like that. So if you do want to punish yourselves and win a copy of Ukulele for the PS4, bear in mind the PS4 doesn't tend to region lock, so it should work throughout the world. Then we will post that to you worldwide. Okay, and that ends the new rebranded episode of Odyssey Xtreme 2019. So I think all that's left to say from all of us here is
April Fools.
And we will see you next time.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye.